Welcome back to the Rodcast, Monday Fun Day edition of the Rodcast. That's right. We'll talk about the fun the Longhorns had over the weekend, putting an Old Testament, old biblical style butt whipping on the Florida Gators. We'll break it down and hear from Steve Sarkisian and review it. We'll also get into the Texans and their unfortunate historical loss, versus the Detroit Lions last night. We'll talk about that as well. The Dallas Cowboys. They actually took an Old Testament style butt whipping this past weekend too. We'll get into that coming up a little bit later on the show and hear from Jerry Jones and hear from Micah Parsons. Yeah, it's a full-on flustercluck going on with the Dallas Cowboys right now. We'll discuss it. We'll also hit some of the other items, the news, notes, and nuggets from the college football weekend, from the NFL weekend. We'll also have all your usual favorites coming up on the show. Rod's rant. We also got the topic for the big fat poll today. We got who said that. We got what the facts, what the stats, off the record, all of that coming up a little bit later on in the show. But let's not waste any time before we do any of that. Let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler because he's a hustle man of many talents. He's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
Oh, we're just living the dream on a Monday morning. I think we should start off by also thanking everyone who has served our country on Veterans Day. Good way to start off on this Monday. Hopefully, if you have the day off, you get to celebrate and remember those who have served us today. So special thanks to all those on a Monday. And we'll get into a good weekend of football that was really good. I was enjoying pretty much all of it up until about halftime last night. About halftime last night, and then it felt like we ran out of juice just a little early there for a really good football weekend. Ran out just a little early.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's if you're a Texans fan, you got to be disappointed in that. I guess you were thrilled with the way the defense played. Defense was unbelievable, but offense just couldn't find a way to close it out. And we'll get into some of the historical stats related to the devastating loss that the Texans took at the hands of the Detroit Lions because they had a double-digit lead. Jared Goff had the worst game of his career. Couldn't ask for a better situation to be in at home in prime time. And the Texans found a way to, I don't know. They found a way to steal a loss, basically. And right there, it was very tough. It was tough to watch. It was cringeworthy in the second half of that game.
Yeah, not a ton of fun to watch that second half. And then, I mean, you just talk about the skin of their teeth. The two field goals the Lions made.
Game of inches. Game of inches, man. It always has been.
It was rough. You're just like, if he could just bounce out, would be good.
It really is. It's a game of inches. Unfortunately for the Texans, down the downside of that one. No, I'm with you. That was hard to watch. It's hard to watch.
It was, not the way you want to go to bed on a Sunday night before starting your work week. Not the best end of the weekend. But we'll get you started off with a good work week. And helping me do that is my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Siskel and Ebert. He is the new Rod Father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Yeah, we will talk about that, of course. We'll talk about the Texans and their loss. We'll start off talking about the Longhorns, of course, and their big win over the Florida Gators, and talk about it was just, and like I said, a butt whipping. 35-point lead at halftime, 35-0 lead at halftime for the Longhorns. They just boat raced Florida. We'll talk about how it started and everything that transpired in that game on Saturday. We'll also hear from Steve Sarkisian. We'll also, like I said, dive into the Texans' loss last night as well. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into it. Let's first hit these Horn headlines with Patrick Davis, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the Longhorns win and also the Texans as well. But first, let's get educated, updated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs dropped their Saturday matchup with the Jazz, 111-110, with Victor Wembanyama racking up 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 blocks. Alperen Şengün had 27 points and 10 rebounds in the Rockets' 101-99 Sunday win over the Pistons. And the Mavs lost the Nuggets 122-120 after a Michael Porter Jr. shot with 6 seconds left gave Denver the lead. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Kings and the Rockets host the Wizards. In college basketball, the Longhorns picked up a 90-59 win over Houston Christian on Friday. Trey Johnson once again showed out with 28 points in the win. Over the weekend, number 1 Kansas held home court with a 92-89 win over number 9 North Carolina. Number 8 Baylor topped number 16 Arkansas 72-67, and number 11 Auburn's upset number 4 Houston 74-69. Texas is back in action Tuesday against Chicago State. In college football, Texas routed Florida 49-17 on Saturday. Elsewhere, number 3 Georgia lost to number 16 Ole Miss 28-10. Number 4 Miami was upset by Georgia Tech 28-23, and number 11 Alabama took out number 15 LSU 42-13. Texas climbs to number 3 in the latest AP poll. And in the NFL, the Chiefs remain undefeated after blocking a field goal attempt as time expired to top the Broncos 16-14. The Steelers beat the Commanders 28-27, stopping Washington inches short of a first down to end the game. The Cowboys never got out of the gates against the Eagles, losing 34-6. And the Texans gave up a 16-point halftime lead to lose to the Lions 26-23 on Sunday Night Football. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a 58-yard field goal with 1:56 left to take the lead for Houston, and Detroit was able to get their game winner to go just inside the uprights as time expired. Tonight, the Dolphins take on the Rams on Monday Night Football, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines, and we'll get to as many of those headlines as we can, but I want to start off talking about the Longhorns, and we'll get to the Texans here. Next segment, we'll go behind the Burn Orange Curtain, hear more from Steve Sarkisian, but 3 things that I want to get into about the Texas game, and like I said, there are obviously a lot of different storylines and details that we'll get to, but there's no doubt that the game turned on Steve Sarkisian's very gutsy call, the testicular fortitude that it took against Florida when it's 0-0 at the time, and for him to go for it on 4th and 1 at his own 24. I don't know how often it's happened. It'd be great somebody do the research and see how often a coach goes for it on 4th down that deep in their own territory. And it was, like I said, I trust that, Sark knew what he was doing. But it is just very rare in football, guys. You just don't see that. Any level of football, you don't see it. You don't see it. That is considered a violation of the highest order in football logic, that you don't go for it on 4th down that deep in your own territory, because the football guides are probably going to punish you for that type of arrogance. Like, nah, man, you go for it because you automatically giving up points. So you don't make it. You just gave them 3 points. You might have given them 7. As a coach to do that, that's a lot on your conscience. So, and by the way, not only the testicular fortitude it takes to go for it on 4th and 1 at your own 24-yard line, that's where it's on 24-yard line, but to put a true freshman in there who you haven't necessarily trusted in critical moments so far this season, to do it with a true freshman and hand it off to a true, even the broadcasters, you remember they were surprised. They were like, yeah, watch for the hard count here. Yep. What? Look at the play. Oh, no. They were surprised too. Because they were like, no, you don't. No, of course, he's just lining up to try to get him off sides, or, he's lining up. He's definitely not going to hand this ball off. Nope. Handed it off to a true freshman, and he converted. And by the way, they didn't initially have it. So it was such a culture play because they didn't initially have it. The football gods did. The football gods, they made him initially pay for his arrogance. I bet we'll hear from Sark talking about it. I bet his heart was ready to drop to his stomach.
Oh, yeah.
When they initially got stopped, he's like, because, oh, man. And then Gunnar Helm from the back starts pushing. And that's what Gunnar Helm's going to get a lot of credit, because that was a culture play. I believe it's Gunnar Helm that comes up and say Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis, and then maybe you get a couple of other guys that jump in there. But initially, it's Gunnar. And Gunnar sees that he stopped because he's like right by his initial gap. And then Gunnar Helm just starts pushing him forward. And then the baby Rhino gets that extra yardage, and then boom, he breaks it. He breaks through and I say breaks it, but got 2 yards. But it felt like he was breaking it because that's how big it was. Game was 0-0 at the time. And remember, and I think this is Sark coaching emotionally. I do. I think he was emotional. He was emotional because the first drive, he was upset the way it worked, the way it ended. right? Because they drove all the way down the field. The script was working. Boom, Sark, pass heavy. He's dialing it up. He's got all the motion and the shifting. He's getting everybody involved early on. I'm talking about on the first drive. Yeah, on the Helm and DeAndre Moore, getting everybody involved. And then remember what he said during the week last week. He said, "We're great when we can get explosive plays and chunk yardage plays on first and second down, and then just stay out of third down." Like what the old late great Bill Walsh quote say, "Hey, the best third down call is the one you ain't got to make. Best damn third down call, you ain't got to worry about it." And that's how they were operating early on in that game, right on that first drive. Remember, you had a DeAndre Moore 10-yarder, DeAndre Moore 12-yarder, Gunnar Helm 20-yarder, Wisner run for 6, Juan Davis for 4. You get, and then you get that loss, that tackle for loss for Trey Wisner, 7-yard loss. Remember that one? It's just a great play by Florida. And then you get the sack on Quinn Ewers on third and long. And then you get the missed field goal. So I think Sark was just a little bit, he was emotional and upset. Like, damn it, that was a perfect drive. And we, one bad play ends up spiraling the whole damn drive. And then we missed the field goal at the end. And then, remember, on that next drive, you got an incomplete pass to Isaiah Bond. If I'm not mistaken, Quinn Ewers just kind of missed him for that first and 10. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And then there's an incomplete one to Gunnar Helm because they drop a linebacker back, almost pick it off. And then you get the Quinn Ewers scramble on they're trying to throw it on 3rd and 10, and he scrambles for 9. And I think Sark's like, what the hell is going on here? What is happening? Why are we already struggling on offense? You know what? I'm going to turn it. I'm turning it. I think he decided at that moment he was going to turn because things weren't necessarily going well to start the game. Even though you had clear advantages, you could move the football, and yet you still were struggling a little bit to find your group, to get your mojo back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He was like, where the hell's my mojo, man? We drove all the way down the field. Then we get a tackle for loss and a sack, miss a field goal. And then we start off this drive, and our wide receivers and our quarterback are now on the same page. And then our pass protection breaks down. Quinn scrambling. Where is our mojo? He's like, you know what? I'm going to get the mojo back. And that play was, like I said, it was a gutsy call, but he got the mojo back because right after he gets to 4th down, he actually knows what he's going to call next. I think that was also part of it. Part of it was frustration on the way the game started. And then the other part was he knew exactly what he was going to call next. What's the next play? It's the most brilliant play design we've seen from Sark so far. It was the ending around to Isaiah Bond, 44-yarder, where you got multiple play fakes, multiple guys. You have multiple motions by Ryan Niblett on the play. It was 21 personnel, your pony package. No surprise here. Somebody's been listening to the show. Pony package. He throws it out there. That drive, that's your first touchdown drive. You went pony package for the rest of the drive. That was deliberate. That was intentional. That was in the script. And he was like, I don't want to abandon my script now. So he went out there and decided, I will be the catalyst for the mojo. Right now, my offense doesn't seem to have it. I started them off with a great script, still ended up with a tackle for loss, and now we are inconsistent. We're a mojo-less offense, and there was that 4th down call that got the mojo, and they never looked back after that. They got the mojo. Yeah. And the mojo was Sark testicular fortitude, and it was a gutsy. There has not been a gutsier call by Sark on the 40 acres, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if there has been.
No.
That is 4th and 1 on your own 24 with a freshman running back in the back because he knows my best down here. He knows Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner may not get that.
Yeah.
Because he also knows his best downhill runner, as we all know, well, as I've been telling you, is Jerry Gibson. He's your best downhill runner. Now, can you trust him in pass protection? Can you trust him to hold him to the football? Maybe not. Because he did have a fumble in it. Even though he had 100 yards.
He fumbled twice, lost one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, can you trust him? I don't know if you can trust him in critical moments, but that was a critical moment. He's like, I got to go with my guy that I know can just run downhill. He initially was stopped, but they call him Baby Rhino for a reason. It was a hell of a call.
Yeah.
Hell of a call.
No, I love it. Yeah, Jared Gibson, he goes, if I want to know one running back that I can put in there and say, you take the ball and you run right where you're supposed to go. Do not bounce this outside. Do not bounce backwards.
Don't get patient. Don't start.
No, run right into this wall and believe that you can break through the wall. But I thought, yeah, it was because if you watch, that first drive, they moved the ball right down the field. And
right down the field.
As soon as they're off schedule, it feels like the entire offense just goes, man, it's not going to be our day.
Yep.
Like, whoa. It was like one bad play, and then it all just snowballed so fast. And so you see all that, and so it was Sark realizing that. And honestly, watching the game, you go, hey, you can pick this up. Like, I know you can't go for it.
You should.
But you should totally pick this up. You can totally pick this up.
You shouldn't go for it, but you can pick it up.
You can't. Yeah, you can't go for it. But and so he puts the team back out there and goes for it. I think understood the moments of the game that this could be a really long one. We're not that far off.
Yep.
We're literally Trey Wisner making one bad decision away from scoring a touchdown on that first drive.
Pretty much.
Because if he doesn't, and we stay on script and we stay on schedule, we're scoring. At least in Sark's mind.
In my mind too.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think you have all of that. And so just going, we're not that far off.
Nope.
And
blowing this team out.
And all of a sudden it's going to be a game. So if I just go put the trust in my offense and they are able to pull it off, everything, and it did. So you don't know how the game goes if he doesn't get that second burst and they come down and score right away. And who knows how that game turns out different. But that was a crazy call so early in the game.
So early in the game. I think he understood. How many times have we said, like, think about the Mississippi State game and even the Vanderbilt game, how close you were to kind of blowing those games wide open.
Exactly.
It was just a couple of plays here and there, like you said, and then things start to spiral. And for some reason, the offense loses that mojo. And I think Sark now he knows his team, and he understood that moment. It's like, I can't give Florida life. If I give them life and they start to believe they can play with us, it just takes a couple of plays, and then the momentum, we can't monopolize. We can't monopolize the momentum, and then they could get some of it. Who knows how the game could go from there. And I think he understood, like, no, I can't allow another drive for them to get a stop this deep in our own territory. Who knows? Bad punt, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna leave it in the hands of fate or allow other variables to be at play here. I'm gonna control it. Let's go 4th and 1. And it was a lot of trust in his guys. And like I said, they didn't initially get it. So give the players credit because they also believed. Because they didn't initially get it, and Gunnar Helm, go watch the play, comes from behind, and he starts pushing. I think Warren Davis gets a push in there, and maybe another lineman, and they finally push him through, and the baby Rhino gets the conversion. It was a great moment. That was a culture play. That was a real culture play in my mind. From Sark to the players to the effort that it took, that was a play of the game. I know it wasn't sexy, but it said so much about where the program is and where Sark is now as a head coach too.
Yeah, I mean, and you said earlier, put in Jarrett Gibson. You put him in where you're like, I haven't seen him in weeks. I don't think I've seen him in SEC play.
I think he's been on that for a snap or two, but not very much.
He hasn't really played an SEC play.
No,
and then you take him out against Florida in this crucial moment and go, well, if we do this, maybe you'll get your mojo back too, because I'm going to trust you in this moment.
And he's from Florida. So the big game for him is almost a double, it's a double benefit because he's a player that's from Florida, probably grew up wanting to go to Florida or, as a fan of Florida. And then he has a big game and big moments versus Florida. And it kind of reminded me of the Georgia game when it was like, what was that, 4th and 2? When he calls the in and around with Ryan Wingate. I'm like, ooh, that is a gutsy call versus Georgia. And you're trying to make a comeback and you need that conversion. And he decided, I'm going to hand it off to a freshman on the end of the round. Man, the scones. He's got scones the size of smart cars sometimes. And I love it. I do. It's like, man, that is a gutsy call. Even, Kirby Smart had to tip his hat on that one. Like, that's a damn good call. Because nobody think, you're like, there's no way he's going to do it. And he actually goes with, if you look at the plays, and I'm kind of in the analytical world, if you go look at his plays and success rate of certain concepts, that may be the most successful concept they have, actually, is their end and rounds.
Yeah.
They get like 25 yards per touch on them. Like, the only bad one they've had is Silas Bowden. I think he got a negative 8 yards. But every time they do the end around, they pop them. They pop them every time, the way Sark sets it up. So it's just, like I said, it's just very gutsy. If we weren't on these airways, I'd call it something else. But testicular fortitude is the best I can do to give him PG-13. Good for you, Sark. That is Good for you. Okay, can we hear from Sark talking about that call, that fourth down call? That thing was a call of the game and the play of the game. Here's Steve Sarkisian in the post game being asked about it.
I believe in our players, and we felt good about the stuff that we had in short yardage for the game. They give me the confidence and belief in the way they execute it in practice. And so I really didn't blink. I was going for it. Our analytical guy told me what the book had said we were supposed to do. But I was already kind of in the mode of let's go for it. I knew there was a lot of football left to be played. And so, we remain aggressive. I don't ever want to lose our stinger, but we want to be, smart with what we do. And so, made the decision and were able to extend the drive.
Sarkis also asked what the book say. Here's Sark's response.
It said to go.
Okay. Just to clarify.
So if we didn't make it, I would have said the book said to go. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
The book said to go for. I don't know what that book said to go for. I don't know what kind of book you got.
That book just,
Sark wrote his own book.
Yeah, that book's one page. It says go for it.
That's it. Exactly. I was like,
what's
Sark,
it? 4th and 37 from your own one? Go for it.
What color is your folder? Because Tom's was green. What color is your folder? I don't know.
Maybe it just says and one. Go for it.
Yeah.
Don't care. And one.
Agree.
Go for it.
Yeah, I don't know, Sark. I don't know about that book you got, but it's all right. Hey, man, I trusted you because you trusted the guys. That was good stuff there. All right, the other talking point that I want to get to is Quinn Ewers. I mean, that he was magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, 19 of 27. He had some throws where he was off. I have a couple of throws where I wish he could have had back that one Isaiah Bond, that out route to Isaiah Bond. I mean, that's another touchdown basically. DeAndre Moore dropped 2 of his potential, or at least dropped 1 potential touchdown, another deep ball that he had. He was 2 of 5 on deep passes, guys, and 2 of those were DeAndre Moore bobbles or drops.
Yeah, for touchdowns.
Yeah. And remember, he missed DeAndre Moore on like a skinny post over the middle. It was actually a really tough throw to put in between like a safety and linebacker, but he missed him on another one. But I mean, that would have been his best deep ball passing performance of his career if DeAndre Moore had caught those passes. Yeah. So DeAndre Moore kind of had an off day. I'm not hating on DeAndre Moore. He's been great. But he had an off day. So Quinn Ewers' number should be even better, guys. 5 touchdowns, set a career high in passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So my theory that I was like, man, I think the guy's getting healthier. Remember I told you, I think it was just lingering effects from the injury. They didn't want to talk about it, but it tracks that when he got hurt, that's when the regression started. And as he got healthier, Vanderbilt, he's a little bit healthier. And then the bye week, and then Florida, and he looks now as healthy as he's been, since prior to the injury. So I'm gonna say Quinn's back because Florida's defense is terrible. We told you if you wouldn't go get your mojo back versus Florida, you ain't got no mojo. Your mojo is gone. You mojo-less. But they got the mojo back, and so did Quinn.
Exactly, and he needed this game. Because part of it, too, is, you had the injury, and then you also have a Georgia team that just really threw a lot of things at him that took away the confidence. So with the injury, and he just didn't look like the Quinn Ewers. He was very far from the Quinn Ewers we saw his first couple of years where he was going to put the ball wherever he wanted to put it. And, you couldn't tell him no. And now, those last couple weeks, you saw him hold that ball an extra second, and then the throw was gone. And he wouldn't make those split-second decisions that you just have to make in pretty much every sport you play in. You got to be able to make and execute things mentally quick enough. And he just was a step behind on a couple of those. And this one, it seemed where he started to get back into it. You need these kind of games along the way to get yourself back into it. But that's part of it goes into Sark trusting in the offense, giving him opportunities, keep trying to find it, keep putting in the script, shots downfield. Even when he misses Bond on that one, doesn't shy away from going back to plays like that. Doesn't just go into the rhythm throws. If they're gonna play man, if they're not gonna put 2 safeties over the top, go for it. Let's have fun.
He did. I think they were schemed up deep throws. I don't. We talked about it. Sark settled for what Vanderbilt was going to allow him to do, and that's fine. So take what the defense is giving you; they'll give it to you. But in that, by the way, how about this? If you look at yak yards, 77%. And 78% are the percentage of yak yards you've had for Quinn in the last 2 games. So against Vanderbilt, everybody was upset that you didn't have enough verticality in the offense. Same amount of yak yards though. But in this game, I think Sark, he didn't necessarily settle for what the defense was giving you. He dialed up some deep shots. You had to stalk, block, and go. That was a touchdown to Matthew Golden, the first one. And that's been Ryan Wingo has scored on that concept this year. DeAndre Moore caught a deep pass on that concept. You see, it's one of his favorite concepts. So that is a dialed up throw because you know you're going to throw to the slot receiver who's faking the block. They fake the swing screen, pump fake to Jaden Blue or Trey Wisner in the flat, and then they throw it to Matthew Golden once he Emmy performance acts like a blocker, stalk block, and then releases upfield. And they've done that multiple times this year. But that is a schemed up first read wide window throw. So you know exactly where you're going with the football. That guy's been schemed open. So that was a schemed open deep throw. And the ones to DeAndre Moore, the two misses were double moves. Remember, they were hitch and goes and then slant and goes. Those are usually primary reads, dialed up, schemed open wide window throws, and they were open for Sark. So I think Sark, and even on the other golden touchdown, which is a great throw by Quinn, it was a switch route. Which means the inside and the inside and outside receiver, they run a route where they end up intersecting or crossing, and they confuse the coverage of the DBs. So they're not necessarily a schemed open throw, but definitely a deliberate concept to try to attack vertically downfield. So I just think Sark at this point, he was like, you know what? They're down multiple starting defensive backs. I mean, we talked about there were 5 DBs on the injury report. 4 of those guys were out. 2 of those guys were starters. You know, they had allowed for 33 passes of 20-plus yards or more prior to playing Texas. That was 111th in the country. How did you want to get your mojo back? Do you want to get it back throwing, or did you want to get it back running? And what I love about it, this is their identity, guys. Remember, I told you before the season started, this is the identity. 70% early down pass rate in the first half. They lead with the pass. The run game complements the passing game. I mean, they didn't really have any rushing yards until the game was well in hand. The biggest rushing play other than that was the Isaiah Bond ending around.
Yeah.
But they weren't running the football that effectively. And they weren't really trying to run it that effectively early on in the game. They were fine leading with the pass and having extensions of the run game in the passing game because that's their identity. And Sark knows you lead with your strength, and your strength is your passing game.
Yeah.
And yeah. So
no, and yeah, the O-line was protecting well enough that you didn't have to fall back on going to the run game more and more than you wanted to because you were trying to give the O-line some wins. They were getting wins in pass protection, which helps you out.
One sack allowed.
And that's one thing, though. I'll say that if you look at this, the Quinn Ewers game, that can give you even a little bit more satisfaction out of what Quinn did is realizing what this Florida defense, even though they're beat up and even though it's not a good Florida defense, did against Carson Beck the week before.
Yep. Amen, brother.
And if you look at that, what Carson Beck, how bad he played against Florida, and then you see Quinn Ewers step out and go, it is not a gimme. So as much as it is, that's a team that you're able to do that kind of thing on and put the numbers up on Florida. It is not a gimme on any in any facet. And so for Quinn to have that big of a game and get his mojo back going before you get into, some big rivalry games is just really huge. And to get that offensive line feeling a little bit better, that once again, it was like the Oklahoma game. Sack early, you a little bit worried.
That's a great point.
You a little bit worried because you get that sack early and you just go, come on, man, this is going to be a long game. And then no more.
Shut it down. You're right about that. And it was like both of them came off twists. They were like stunts. Yeah. They were twists. So essentially that was something they found early they could utilize, but then Texas shut it down pretty well. So Quinn's performance, like I said, it was great. Glad he had another bounce back. I don't know if it was a bounce back. I think the bounce back performance was Vanderbilt, but this was just this was record setting for him. So the Quinn that looks like the Michigan Quinn. That's what we're trying to get to. How close can we get to that Quinn? Like this is closest that we've seen him since the injury. Another thing, this is what I love this. I saw more celebrations in this game by the guys. Now, when you beat somebody as bad as you beat Florida, you're going to have a lot of celebrations. I get that 49-17, a lot of reasons to celebrate. But I said this last year. I've been saying this forever. You should see a lot of celebrations when you're really good, as Texas is. And last year, we didn't see as many because celebrations mean you plan on having success. When we're successful, this is what we're going to do. When we ball out, this is what we're going to do, just so you know. And crazy part about it, I think it helps. I think it helps you. You plan on being successful, and I'm noticing now a lot more celebrations held. Quinn Ewers in the O line had a weird celebration. I don't know what it was. Matter of fact, Jake Majors, I see, said they got it off TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, so I'm not cool enough. I get it. Taft Dad had some celebrations. I think there was some references to there's some President Trump. There's a dance that people love that President Trump does all the time. I saw a couple of those out there. So people, they got people celebrating all types of ways and in different ways, and it's good. It's good for the team though, because everybody's got their own individual handshakes now where they celebrate. It's really good. And so Jake Majors was asked about the individual celebration that the lineman had with Quinn Ewers and how they came up with it. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure you can find it. It's Corey Mose. Shout out to my man Corey Mose because he found this. He got this audio. But here is Jake Majors explaining the touchdown celebration with Quinn in the O-line.
I gotta ask you, how much time does the lineman spend on celebrations with Quinn?
That was more of a Friday night kind of coordination.
Okay.
We all watched TikToks and reels, so we kind of found that dance was going viral, and we kind of wanted to hit it after the first touchdown. And I haven't got to see it yet, but I'm sure it was a good one.
Do you know how much time I spent practicing?
Not that much.
Okay.
I'd say maybe less than 2 minutes.
Who was the instigator of that?
I think it was it was a cohesive decision. Me, Hayden, and Quinn. We all decided all right, we're gonna go here, and then we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna do that. So it was. I mean, whenever you're able to celebrate and have fun, that's whenever the game. That's whenever you kind of fall back on why you play this game.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've seen a game with that many celebrations by Texas in a long time.
No, I mean, I remember earlier in the season, we heard the DBs talking about bringing the juice, and that was a big thing that it was a conscious effort by this defensive staff to be like, y'all need to celebrate the wins because it's going to make everything better. It's like, this is what DBs do. DBs celebrate everything. So you need to celebrate everything. And if you do that, and then if you get a sack, celebrate, like, you got to do that because this is what winning teams do. And I know, it's not the old school way, but it's like, this is what you need to do to get your mojo going, to get you feeling better, to make you feel like you're playing a dominant game is when you're out there having fun and winning, playing that. And it's transferred to the whole team. Man, celebrate and have fun while you can, because it's going to be rough on some of these games. So enjoy it while you can.
Nope, I agree. I think it's a good sign for the culture, but a good sign that they expect success. A lot of celebrations mean you expect success, and I think Texas didn't necessarily have that last year. All right, let's get to the break. I know we want to talk Texans, so we'll do that. I promise you. We'll get to NFL news, notes, and nuggets in the next hour. We come back. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian in the post game, talking about the team and their big victory. Then we'll get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day as well later on in this hour. All right, we're coming right back. We talk more Texas football, and we go behind the burnt orange curtain right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Steve Sarkisian audio. Time to hear from Sark in the post game of their big win over Florida. Of course, Quinn, big storyline that, Quinn had a magnificent performance, 5 touchdowns, 333 yards, 19 of 27. Should have been even more prolific because a couple of drops in there and bobbles in there that would have led to even bigger. And he got to 400 something passing yards. But Sark was asked about Quinn and Quinn getting his confidence back, right? Helping the offense get its mojo back. Here's what Sark said about building Quinn's confidence with this game.
I thought Quinn played fantastic today, and I thought he played great last, 2 weeks ago against Vanderbilt. He just had a little bit of bad luck with some tip balls, but he was on point again today. We had, unfortunately, a couple drops for him, but he was on point. He really navigated the offense as much as it was just throwing the ball. I just felt like our rhythm, our tempo, the intent in which we were playing the game, the ball was going to the right guys on time. They were catchable balls where they could run with it. So I just think he's come into the game with a real sense of confidence coming into the game. And I can only imagine coming out of a game like this, that his confidence is even better.
All right. So Sark did earlier in the press conference, I guess, refer to Quinn as navigating the game really well. And that was a strange way to describe it. Usually people talk about managing a game from the quarterback position. And it's weird because I think this is Sark being a quarterback and quarterbacks taking offense to the term game manager, which I've always said they think of it like a slur or something for quarterbacks. Like no quarterback wants to be a game manager. Say, well, at one point you need to learn how to manage a game. I don't know if you want to be called a game manager, but I need you to be able to manage a game at one point. But either way, this is kind of Sark being a quarterback and being against that term game manager and not wanting to call Quinn that when he was asked about whether Quinn at times is needed to be a game manager.
Lets the game come to him.
I would agree. I used to chuckle at that. Not to reference another player at another school, but it used to be said a lot about Mac Jones, and all the guy did was finish second in the Heisman Trophy and throw for a bunch of yards and touchdowns and win a national championship. So I think at the end of the day, we live in a world of quarterbacks, on highlights at night on certain channels. They want to show when they run around and run this way, run that way, and throw a ball behind their back and get a completion. And then you look up and they're 12 for 27, for 140 yards. We tend to try to play the game the right way, efficiently. We put a lot on the quarterback in managing the pre-snap operation that we do, as well as the post-snap operation. And I think at the end of the day, that's what the really good quarterbacks throughout time have done. And so, yes, you want to be talented at the position and you want to make those critical plays at critical moments. But you got to put yourself in those moments, and that's by managing the game and navigating the offense, down the field.
Mm-hmm. So you still got to use the term manage the game, man. So, you have to. You have to learn that. It's just a step in your evolution or development as a QB, even though they don't like it. They don't like that term. All right, let's hear from Sark talking about the O-line. O-line definitely cleaned up a lot of their issues in pass protection, only allowing 1 sack in that game versus Florida. They also, I thought, closed the game strong with the running game, which is kind of what Sark's formula is all about. But here's Sark talking about the O-line and how they played versus the Gators.
Well, it's key to the drill. I think any good team I've been a part of, the offensive line is kind of on the front line, figuratively speaking. It's like they're the ones that kind of set a lot of the tone for what we do. We can design all sorts of plays, run game, pass game, screens, but if you can't block them, the game gets hard. And we don't play 7-on-7, and so we've got to be really good at the line of scrimmage. And I think that they've been challenged, and I think they've responded at a high level, and that they've responded too because there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of pride in that group, a lot of guys who have played winning football, and I think they showed up today and played a brand of football that we're used to seeing.
All right, they're talking about the O-line. The running back room, after watching Jerry Gibson rush for 100 yards, actually, on what do you have, 16 carries. I wonder if people are starting to think maybe, especially using him on that fourth down, maybe there'll be a little bit of a shakeup in the running back room. Not a shakeup, but at least now Jerry Gibson may be added to some of the potential reps in that running back room. Here's Sark when he's asked about, where he's going with the running back room at this point in the season.
I think that's a great point. We made it. It was a real conscious effort coming into the game to say, hey, let's see Jarek back in the fold of what it looked like early in the year when he kind of had to play, because I think he provides a little different, change of pace for us. It's a little bit more of a downhill physical running style. And then you're able to get Blue on the edge. You're able to get Trey on the edge. And then you're able to utilize both those guys in the passing game too. And they're real weapons receiving the ball for us. So I think it's a very versatile room that we have. We just have to make sure that we're tapping into the versatility of all the players that we have.
And that's why maybe we're starting to see the pony package come back a little bit. Pony package, I think, had its best display of the season. Definitely a deliberate effort by Sark to throw out that pony package. And now I haven't seen Jerry Gibson in it much, but that would be another added dimension to it, because Trey Wisner and I think Jaden Blue add very similar, skill sets in the pony package. You want somebody that can add almost a thunder and a lightning, right? A power and a speed element to your pony package. And I think you could get that with Gibson. Here's Sark, which talking about Isaiah Bond, because Isaiah Bond was obviously missed by this offense. There's an explosivity that is added, right? An explosive element that is added when you add his world-class speed. Here is Sark talking about adding Bond back to the offense.
Well, I mean, obviously he had a couple really big explosive plays. The reverse, I think, was, 40-something yards on the reverse. The screen, he's able to take that for a touchdown and make a guy miss. And what he does, I think, is add to the speed factor that we have on offense. He's got elite speed. DeAndre Moore's got elite speed. Jaden Blue played really fast today. Trey Wisner played fast. And so when we can spread the field a little bit and it not feel like we're so condensed and it's hard, that we want people to feel our speed. We want people to fear our speed. And when they play back, now some of those underneath things, we can create space for our guys to catch and run. But also when they do come up, that we have those opportunities to take shots down the field, which we did that today as well. So I just thought kind of the flow of the offense was good today. And again, the offensive staff had a good plan. But I thought the players executed that plan. And anytime you come out of a game with over 300 yards passing, 200 yards rushing, that's generally meaning, it was a good formula for success with what we were trying to do.
And Bond is so unique in the way they use Isaiah Bond, right? I got this stat. So basically, if you count the end and arounds, because that's where he's actually getting a handoff, he's got 3 of those for 95 yards. And if you count his targets behind the line of scrimmage, so those are those quick hitters, those screens, sometimes the bubble screens that they do for Isaiah Bond, one that he popped in this game for a touchdown. If you count those, he's got 3 touchdowns, according to Pro Football Focus, on 8 of those targets so far. So if you count 11, those if just a handoff or a target behind the line of scrimmage. So that's an extension of the running game, a long handoff. There would be 11 of them on the season, 4 touchdowns as a result, 5 explosive plays of 20 yards or more as a result of those plays. He's essentially your explosive element in the run game. He's your he is, because that's a long handoff, an extension of the run game. We've been talking about that all season long. When you just flip it out there to Jaden Blue on the perimeter or on the edge, and you throw it out there to Trey Wisner, that's a modern day version of the toss sweep. And if you're using Isaiah Bond the same way, essentially those wide receiver screens out there, they're passes behind the line of scrimmage, easy completions for Quinn, and then you're handing it off to him, and he's giving you basically 45% explosive play rate anytime you use him in that manner. And if you lump those into the same category, which I do, those are extensions of the running game. He basically is your most explosive threat in that expanded definition of the run game. And you would think when he's got world-class speed, everybody thinks verticality, taking the top off the defense, and he can do that. But he's actually been more explosive being used as an extension in the running game than he has been as a deep threat in the offense. Isn't that crazy? Like that's where I think Sark it's intentional. Now it's not just, I thought at one point he's like, oh man, maybe that's an aberration. Maybe that's not like, no, it's intentional. And Sark should, try to get him at least one handoff, or 2 to 3 of those quick hitters behind the line of scrimmage or throws, on screens and bubble screens a game. Because he's going to pop one. Maybe pop 2, like he did versus Florida. So that's what you miss about Isaiah Bond, the ability to take those, concepts to the house. He can do that. It's pretty amazing. All right, we come back. We'll get into the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day. We also will get into the musically themed day of the week. And then next hour, we dive into the NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We talk Texans and Cowboys in the 7 o'clock hour. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Baby's coming back on the horn.
Back here on the Rodcast on a Monday morning, and that means it's a smooth soul Monday, easing you back into your work week. And, maybe have the day off today. Maybe your work week starts tomorrow, but easing you back into the week here with some smooth soul music. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. Text lines open 512-447-3776. And we'll get this posted up on X at The Horn ATX.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on The Horn.
Big Fat Poll of the Day today. Who was the MVP for Texas against Florida? I think we're going to go. I think I know where this is going to go, but we'll say Quinn Ewers probably going to be your winner. 19 for 27, 333 yards through the air, and 5 touchdowns. And that's not even playing a full game. That's with him getting pulled out and Arch Manning coming in.
Yeah.
We'll also throw in Jaden Blue, ends up with 60 rushing yards and 67 receiving yards and a touchdown in the game. Very useful all around. Some big plays for him. Trey Moore was creating a lot of havoc. 2 tackles for loss, a fumble recovery there on the defense. Andrew Makuba, 6 tackles, gets an interception on there as well. It's hard on the defense because so many players were making plays. It wasn't like there was just one big standout player, but those are 2 guys that I thought had really good games. Makuba gets his first interception. Trey Moore, I think, you're starting to see a little bit more of what he does.
I agree.
Where, if you watch it and you go back and rewatch it, you'll see him in on plays. But in the moment, you don't necessarily always see what he's doing. You kind of have to look for him to see what he's doing to be effective. And these last couple of weeks, you started to see his name getting called a little bit more and him being that much more of a nuisance. So that's a really good thing to see as you continue down the season. So I want to show him a little bit of love as well. So that is, who is your MVP for Texas against Florida?
It's got to be Quinn, but defensively, honestly, you can also make the argument Alfred Collins.
Alfred Collins had a really good game, yes.
A great game. I mean, those 2 interceptions were tip passes by Alfred Collins.
Yeah.
Both of those. He got his big mitts on both of those and ended up being turnovers. He's playing some of the best football of his career at Texas. Best stretch of games I think we've seen him play. So, I think defensively it could be Anthony Hill had a great game. Led the team in tackles. He had a really good game. You brought up Makuba and those guys. I mean, the DBs continue to play at a really, really high level. Yeah, defensively, it could be like 5 or 6 guys. But overall, it's got to be Quinn. It's got to be Quinn.
Yeah.
Hell, it could be Sark, honestly, with that play call.
Well, and that's all I'll say. This is defense and Sark, but that was another one is at the end of the first half when they get a holding penalty, when Texas gets a stop on 3rd down. It's like 4th and 4, and they get a holding penalty. And Sark takes the hold instead of just saying, we got the stop. Let's get off the field.
Yep.
He takes the hold, believing in his defense that he can not only get a stop, but I think I can push him out of field goal range.
You definitely could. You're right about that.
And so that was another gutsy move by Sark at that moment of the game to trust his defense and show his defense that he has, that he believes in them, that they can go out and pitch a shutout. They did until the end. They were doing very well up until the end, and it kind of got away from a little bit there when they started to play a little bit more conservatively.
Well, it's just honestly, and we haven't talked about anything bad with the game because it was so much good. But I told you guys those Florida running backs were pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Kept telling you guys, say, man, this is the best group of running backs Texas faced all year, and they didn't even have Montrell Johnson. Montrell Johnson wasn't there. That was just the other 2, Ball and Jacoby Jackson. And they were able to run the rock a little bit. Now, was it of any consequence? No. The running game was irrelevant because that's all they had. And complimentary football had Texas up by 3-4 touchdowns, 35 points at half. So, you can run the ball all you want. And then Texas did, I'm sure, at one point concede that because they're like, well, we're up big. Why would we allow them to get back in here by taking unnecessary chance in gambling? So you concede. Yeah, please take your 4 or 5 yards and run the clock out because the game's over then. You basically are waving the white flag. So, yes, there's some of that, but those running backs made some plays against Texas defense. So if there's some bad, maybe that would be the one coaching point coming out of it is that they ran the rock.
Yeah. No, they did. And a lot in the second half, too, where it was.
Yes, of course.
But going back to it, when we talk about those big plays, that second half stop where you stop them on a 3rd down, give them another 3rd down and stop them again was a big play in that game to just show how dominant Sark felt this team could be and how dominant they were in that first half and just making Florida fans pull their hair out after you got the announcement that Billy Napier's job was safe and then that happens. And
man, yeah, the AD was there and stuff. It was
just walking around the sideline like, oh, that should have left there. Should have left that one in the drafts folder, I think.
Definitely should have left that one. Like there was no need. I guess there was a need for recruiting because you want to be able to keep the guys from transferring out. But that did not look good. That was not age well. That we don't know if they get blown out like that in the last 2 games, and then I think they have Florida State at the end. They can't lose to Florida State, guys. If they lose Florida State, Bill Napier will be fired.
No,
I think
no. Yeah, that's
Florida State's. They're one of the worst teams in college football right now.
No, and I think you played really well against Georgia, and so you're like, we're feeling pretty good. We're feeling pretty good, and then it gets. But DJ Lagway comes back. There'll be that offense will be a different looking offense. Totally. So he was warming up before the game. I don't think he was ever really going to play, but they let him go out there and warm up, so he's at least moving. He's not.
Yeah, no, you save him for Florida State. You get him ready for Florida State.
Yeah,
they may try to play him next week, but I would save him for Florida State because right now, the way you look, you can lose to Florida State. I don't think you will. They're still way better than them, but you can't take any chances. That's in state. You want to win that one. So they're probably saving them for that one. Okay. MVP. That is the topic for the big fat poll today. Who's your MVP? I got a feeling, probably going to easily be Quinn here. And it should be, by the way. Quinn had a hell of a day, and should have been even better. Like I said, DeAndre Moore had probably his worst game since he's been at that starting role at wide receiver. And if he had a better day, Quinn would have had a monster day. Probably would have got up close to 500 yards passing or something like that. All right, we come back. We'll get into Texans. We got to talk about the Texans and the Cowboys on the other side. And that will be posted, by the way. We'll get that posted for you at the Horn ATX on X. When we come back, we'll talk about the historically disappointing loss for the Houston Texans and what the hell is going on with the Dallas Cowboys. They are melting down right now. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a smooth so Monday, and that's when Patrick plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who might have had a tough weekend. And I, as a Texans fan, I am in that, definitely in that group. Had a tough weekend after watching the Texans lose in historically bad fashion, which we'll get into here in this segment. Also, Cowboys fans, you're in the same boat as Texans fans right now after receiving an Old Testament style butt kicking at the hands of your division rivals. So we'll get into that. We'll hear from Jerry Jones. He's a little bit standoffish, and it's understandable why, considering the state of his Dallas Cowboys. We'll also hear from Michael Parsons because some comments that he made, they went viral. We'll get to that as well. And CD Lamb apparently has or at least had some comments to say about the construction of the stadium, which has become a big topic of conversation, and the glare of the sun and how it affects the players and their performance and production on the field. We'll get to all that coming up a little bit later on in this segment. But first, we'll get to the Horn headlines. But go check out the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day as well, because my man Patrick Hooks is up there as well. Patrick, give the folks the topic for the Big Fat Poll of the day.
Big Fat Poll of the day. Who is the MVP for Texas against Florida? Quinn Ewers, Jaden Blue, Trey Moore, Andrew Makuba. If you want to throw another name out there, you can. Rod brought up Alfred Collins, another name that was very important in that game and a really good player for that game. But I think Quinn Ewers is probably going to run away with this.
Yeah, no, I like your Trey Moore went up there too. I mean, Trey Moore, like you said, you talked about how we've been waiting on that breakout game. I guess this is it. If you're talking about just the stats and the impact plays and the havoc plays, the early on, the multiple tackles for losses, the fumble recovery early on, seems like Trey Moore finally had that game where Longhorn fans have been waiting on him to have that singular impact. And you definitely saw that from Trey Moore. So happy for him. Trey Moore's getting a lot of votes here, like a lot of them, but 12%. He's behind Quinn Ewers, who right now the lead. I think over 80% of you guys who have voted so far say Quinn Ewers was the MVP of the game against Florida. I agree, and there's still some people who have been hard on Quinn in that game too, saying because he missed some throws. Like, man, he's not perfect, and he won't be perfect. But like I said, if you can get that Quinn playing closer to the version we saw versus Michigan, that's good enough for Texas to win a national title. And at one point, we weren't sure if he was playing good enough for Texas to win it all. And now I'll admit, when you face a defense that can put pressure on Quinn, and Arkansas can put a little bit more pressure on him because they got some good players coming off the edge. A&M will be able to put a little bit of pressure on them. We'll see how Quinn responds. That's why the Michigan game was so, to me, it was such a monumental moment for him because it was one of the first games where he handled pressure really well. And I don't know if he made a bad decision under pressure that entire day. He actually had a higher Pro Football Focus grade under pressure than he did from a clean pocket. He had put the cape on. He was in his zone. And that kind of Quinn had people talking about him being the first quarterback taken, and in the conversation to being in the Heisman finalist, that Quinn. And we get closer to that Quinn. Now, in this game, he wasn't under a lot of pressure. So, I think that's the question. When he is under pressure, what will we see? What version of Quinn will we see? All right, there you go. So that is the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Go check it out at the Horn ATX on X. All right, let's get to the Horn headlines first here, and then get updated, educated, and informed with those. Then we'll come back and talk Texans and Cowboys. But first, the Horn headlines with Patrick Davis.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs dropped their Saturday matchup with the Jazz 111-110, with Victor Wembanyama racking up 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 blocks. Alperen Sengun had 27 points and 10 rebounds in the Rockets' 101-99 win over the Pistons. And the Mavs lost to the Nuggets 122-120 after a Michael Porter Jr. shot with 6 seconds left gave Denver the lead. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Kings and the Rockets host the Wizards. In college basketball, Longhorns picked up a 90-59 win over Houston Christian on Friday. Trey Johnson once again showed out with 28 points in the win. Over the weekend, number 1 Kansas held home court with a 92-89 win over number 9 North Carolina. Number 8 Baylor topped number 16 Arkansas 72-67. And number 11 Auburn upset number 4 Houston 74-69. Texas is back in action again Tuesday against Chicago State. And Texas women's basketball started their season with a 119-47 win over Southeast Missouri, with 6 Longhorns scoring in double digits. In college football, Texas routed Florida 49-17 on Saturday. Elsewhere, number 3 Georgia lost to number 16 Ole Miss 28-10. Number 4 Miami was upset by Georgia Tech 28-23, and number 11 Alabama took out number 15 LSU 42-3. Texas climbs to number 3 in the latest AP poll. Elsewhere, Texas women's soccer took home the SEC championship Sunday with a 1-0 win over South Carolina, and they now wait for the NCAA tournament bracket revealed today, with games starting this weekend. And in the NFL, the Chiefs remain undefeated after blocking a field goal attempt as time expired to top the Broncos 16-14. The Steelers beat the Commanders 28-27, stopping Washington inches short of a first down to end the game. The Cowboys never got out of the gates against the Eagles, losing 34-6, and the Texans gave up a 16-point halftime lead to lose the Lions 26-23 on Sunday Night Football. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a 58-yard field goal with 1:56 left to take the lead for Houston, and Detroit was able to get their game winner just inside the uprights as time expired. Tonight, the Dolphins take on the Rams on Monday Night Football, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. Appreciate those as always. Let's get to one of those Horn Headlines. The Texans with a 26-23 loss to the Detroit Lions, and they had this game in hand. They actually, in the third quarter, the Texans were up 23-7 in this matchup early on in the third quarter before the Lions start to mount their comeback. And, the macro issue for the Texans in this game is that they were blanked on the scoreboard in the second half. And if they had been able to do anything offensively in the second half, then you'd be talking about potentially a different result. Now, Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions, we'll get to that, because defensively, DeMeco Ryans, I thought, had a brilliant game plan. The defense played they played fantastic. They really did. You really can't ask more from your defense. I mean, than to force Jared Goff, who was playing like one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league. He was in the MVP conversation. And I don't know if anybody was playing the quarterback at a higher level than Jared Goff going into that game versus Texans. And he throws 5 interceptions in the first 3 quarters of that game. And I think he threw them all versus zone coverage as well, which is also, interesting. But we'll get into that a little bit. But this is how historically bad the Texans' loss was after forcing Jared Goff to throw 5 interceptions and to have a double-digit lead on the Detroit Lions. So teams basically this goes back to 1970. Teams to win when trailing by 15 points or more and throwing 5 interceptions in the same game. The last team to do it was the 1970 Baltimore Colts. Apparently, they were the last team that had a quarterback that threw at least 5 interceptions and were trailing by at least 15 points, and that was in 1970. Their deficit was 17. The Lions' deficit was 16, and teams had been 373-1 since 1933 in that situation, and now you just got the second win apparently for teams who had been trailing by at least 15 points and throwing 5 interceptions in the same game. 373-1 since 1933. Yeah. That's, you don't want to be on the wrong side of that kind of history. That's where the Texans are, on the wrong side of that kind of history. It said quarterbacks to throw 5 interceptions and still win the game. Now, that's happened a few times. Romo did it in 2007, actually. in week 5. Romo did in 2007. And I think Matt Ryan was the last one to do it in week 11 of 2012. But this is more about the Texans and the Texans' lack of offense in the second half, which, we've talked about the pass protection issues, which, that's an issue, and maybe that's related to this second half scoring issue. But Bobby Slowick's got to figure out how to score points in the second half. Right now, the Texans are 26th in the NFL in second half scoring. They, on average, are scoring 8 points per game, a little over 8 points per game in the second half of the second half of games in the 2024 season. This is the first time they actually had 0 points in the second half, but this is the last. Actually, I'll give you all of the second half point totals for the Texans so far this season. 6 versus the Jets, 6 versus Indy, 3 versus Green Bay. So you hadn't scored a touchdown since you faced the Patriots in the second half. You did score 27 versus the Patriots in the second half, so you lit it up in the second half there. Then Buffalo, you scored 6, Jacksonville 7, Minnesota 7, the Bears 3, and you did score 17 in the second half versus Colts. So you've only scored double digits twice in the second half this season.
Yeah. And it's just been so far the lack of adjustments, the lack of being able to, take that punch in the second half when you go up against good coaches and guys that are going to change up what they're throwing at you. And there's just no adjustment made by the Texans in these second halves. Nope. And Aaron Glenn went in the locker room, came out with a better game plan. He saw what was working for CJ Stroud, and they started to take that away. And instead of trying to find a way to get back to that or find another thing to make it work for CJ Stroud, they just said, well, just take away this and we're good. And there's no answer back. They just keep trying to do the thing they've now taken away. And it feels like you're running into a wall because, as good as CJ Stroud looks in a first half, in that second half, when you take away what he wants to go to, when they say just take away Tank Dell because CJ Stroud really likes to have a security blanket.
Yep.
And if we take away that, you get to see Mechie as his best game as a Texan so far. And it's for not because they understood the assignment in the second half and the Texans just never figured out any other way to go about it. And it's rough because you did get in field goal range a couple times. The one at the end wasn't really because 58's, they can hit them now, but that's not really field goal range where you blame the kicker on that one as much. You would have liked to seen them be able to pick up a little bit more yardage. The fact that they understood to slow down Joe Mixon as well, and you weren't able to get him going at all at any point in this game. He had a couple decent runs, but I think he averaged under 2 yards per carry for the game.
Yeah,
you have to be able.
Worst game.
You have to be able to figure out a way to get Joe Mixon more involved in this game. He has been so important that you named him captain last week. You named him an additional captain, and so I think there's this still a part of Bobby Slowick's play calling that he's still too stubborn on a lot of things and not as willing to go with the flow and admit that this team isn't good enough to always just set their way. And when things start to go wrong, you have to start to make adjustments and be smarter than the other team. And they just haven't been in the second half at all this season.
I know. Yeah, it's upsetting because I think some of the luster is off of Bobby Slowick. Too many people talking about him last year. He's going to be a fast riser as a head coach, and now people are wondering because of this issue. Can he make adjustments? Is he a coach that can be a chess master, right, and match wits with opposing coaches? So I think he's got to figure out something. I think D'Amico can help him here because D'Amico is a defensive mind. He should be able to go into games and also look at that. Now, D'Amico's calling plays during the game, so not during the games, but maybe during the week. He can reverse engineer those game plans and go, well, these are the likely adjustments based on this team. I've watched this defense. I know what the rules of this defense are. I know their tendencies. I know, what they like to run. And I know what their identity is once I identify that. And if I was that defensive play caller going up against your game plan, these are the adjustments I would make. And therefore you can help Bobby Slowick anticipate the opponents. We talked about this with Sark actually a couple of years ago. That, you should be able to help your defense anticipate what the opposing team is going to do adjustment wise. If you're an offensive play caller, and even vice versa, your defensive coordinator should be able to help you. But in this case, both of them are inexperienced. This is on D'Amico to help to solve the problem. If I'm D'Amico, I go to Bobby Slowick and, pretty much before the games, whether it be a Friday or Saturday, whatever, go through that game plan, reverse engineer it, come up with your own adjustments, because D'Amico is a brilliant defensive mind. You just saw it in that game, right? Versus the Detroit Lions. He's a brilliant defensive mind, and say, all right, this is what they're probably going to do. Now you need a counter. You need to counter whatever these adjustments I throw at you, A, B, C, D, and E, whatever they throw out there, which one of these you have a counter ready for each of these adjustments. And maybe that'll help them, because you're right. Right now, you're getting nothing. There's no adjustments happening. If they are, they're not effective at all for the Texans in the second half. So they're losing, that, if you will, that battle of wits in the second half. I will say that the Texans defense, I know some people were saying that they got lit up in the fourth quarter. They didn't show up. Man, it's hard to stop a team like Detroit for 4 quarters. And stopping them for 3 quarters, I thought was a damn good job. And D'Amico Ryans, he gave his team the chance with that defensive game plan, gave them a they were in as good a position as you could be in for going up against what some people said was the hottest team in the NFL. I don't know if you can be in a better position than that. They just had to find a way to close, and they just couldn't close. And we couldn't, going back to it, the Texans have a hard time beating good teams. Their next step is to consistently be able to beat good teams. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat, but they don't beat good teams consistently.
No, they have crucial flaws that the good teams are able to expose.
Yep.
And they just haven't seemed to be able to fix. And by the time they fix one thing a little bit, like the offensive line wasn't as bad this week, but that's also because Aiden Hutchinson's not there. So the pass rush for the Lions isn't what it needs to be right now.
They still got like 4 sacks, I think.
Yeah, they still got 4 sacks, but it wasn't as bad as
yes,
8,
you're right. No, he had some time. He had time.
So he had a little bit more time, and especially in that first half, they were able to get him to step up in the pocket more. And it felt like in the second half that went away, and he was sliding to the outside more.
Yeah,
and they're giving him more boots and all of that, which is fine. But again, you talk about the footwork in that, and it's a lot harder to throw running sideways than it is moving forward. So when they were able to create a pocket that he could step up into, he was throwing the ball a lot better, a little bit more accurate, finding guys across the middle of the field. And when he boots out, you cut off, 60, 70% of the field?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so when you just keep doing that over and over again, you're taking away so many options. You have to leave some things open. And it just felt like in the second half, they weren't trying to set that tone of we're not going to have to keep running away from you. We'll sometimes step up into it. We'll keep some of our options open. They just weren't able. Those game plans, it was more, I think this will work to get us a first down instead of still trying to have those explosive plays and trying to make things work. It just seemed like a really, really bad game plan in the second half, and then was not executed very well either.
No, I agree with you. And how about this stat? The Texans have a plus 57 point differential in the first half of games. Plus 57. And that margin drops to minus 59 in the second half of games. So in the first half of games, they have a plus 57 point differential, and that margin drops to minus 59 in the second half of games.
Crazy.
They're a totally different team, first half to second half. They have been this year. Yeah, they got to. That's I think the more glaring issue. Pass protection, it still is an issue, but I agree with Patrick against Detroit. Now, Detroit's pass rush not as formidable because they didn't play Zadarius Smith and no Aiden Hutchinson. But 4 sacks, but they were still able to at least execute the passing game. And without Nico Collins, I think that's another. If you have Nico Collins, you probably win this game.
Yeah,
not probably. I think you do.
Yeah,
you got a way to close it out with Nico.
And even though the defense played well, if you have Will Anderson, maybe I think there was some players that were very impactful for the Texans that weren't there. But at the same part, none of that matters because you should have won the game.
Should have won the game.
It wasn't like, man, we were a player away. No, you had it.
You had it.
You had the game. There is no excuse. There is no way out of it. The reality is you had the game won. You had it where you wanted. You got Jared Goff, who's in the MVP conversation, to throw 5 interceptions in the game. 5
interceptions.
And in the second half, you just did not play offense.
I just don't. Yeah, 5. And I gave you the stat. I mean, that just doesn't happen, guys. It's the teams that previously were up at least 15 points in games and that forced their opposing quarterback to throw 5 interceptions. They were what is it 373 1-1, and the Texans end up finding a way to lose that game.
No,
so
and I think
it shows the maturity that they're not mature enough yet.
No,
that's part of what they got to get to yet. By the way, coaching too.
Oh,
they're not
I
mature
agree.
enough yet to be able to close out big.
Because I think that was something, defensively they are tougher, but offensively it felt like Detroit in that second half really wanted to face them in. No, we're the tougher team.
Yep.
And we'll actually give you a lot of things, but you can't now finesse us. We're going to take away the finesse, and we'll kind of give you we think if we give you the finesse and just make you try and run up the middle on us or try and but you can't zone run us. You can't wait for a pocket to form, because when you watch any of Joe Mixon's runs that actually worked, he basically had to catch that ball and go as fast as he possibly could.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
You would see him like
go.
There was no waiting. There was no patience. It was run to get 3 or 4 yards.
Yep.
And so you're not going to break anything, but this is the only way you're going to get past the line of scrimmage was to take off from the get. And that's not a great game plan down the stretch. And so just watching all of that, you got out-toughed at the end. You got outsmarted at the end. And you just felt like you just kept painting yourself into a corner.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's except they did beat one good team. They beat Buffalo. But I'm saying consistently be able to beat good teams. I mean, you want to win a championship. That's what you out there. That's what the playoffs are all about. Literally going through a gauntlet of good teams and beating them. And honestly, the way the schedule works out, they're not going to have to really. I don't know if they're going to have the opportunity to showcase that, because they got to play at Dallas. Dallas is not a good team. They should be. If they lose to one of these teams, then we really start freaking out.
Yeah.
But they're at Dallas versus Tennessee, at Jacksonville. Those are all bad teams. Texans should beat them whether they're playing good football or not. Versus Miami, depending on if Tua's there, that could be a challenge for them. That's a team just like the Jets, right? They got a potential to beat the Texans. Because they do have some playmakers on defense and they got playmakers on offense. And if Tua plays, they can maximize those. You're going to lose at Kansas City. You're going to lose to Baltimore. Those are good teams, and you're not ready to beat good teams yet. But I would say you should have beat Detroit, but I would say you're probably likely going to lose to those teams, because I don't necessarily trust them to close out against good teams consistently. But then you'll beat Tennessee. So you'll still end up with 11 wins.
No, and I mean, the reality of it all is they're not that far away.
No, not at all.
If you can clear up some of these problems, you walk away from these games winning by 2 touchdowns. So you're not that far away from it. The problem is you're also not that far away from being a dumpster fire.
If your O-line gets worse or regresses, that could easily happen.
Another injury, it's
Bobby Slowick doesn't improve as a coordinator.
It's really this catch-22, because it's one way. If you fix a couple of those problems, you figure out a couple steps that are different. It reminds me of Sark early on coaching here, where he had that script and it would usually be pretty good, and then everything would fall apart and he just wouldn't be able to make the right adjustments. And now he started to figure that out, and he's much better chess master now than he was a couple years ago. And you hope that Slowick can get there and continue to grow as a coach. And if he can do that, if this O-line, they looked better this week than they looked before. There wasn't as many penalties on them. You move Scruggs.
Unblocked free rushers at CJ like they have been.
You basically have 2 centers now playing, because you move Scruggs over to left guard and put in Patterson back at center when he got back off the injury. So Green's not playing, but you put Scruggs in there. So maybe a couple more minds that are looking in there that know what they're doing. So you had a couple of decent plays. I don't know what Titus Howard was thinking when he stripped the ball from his own quarterback. That might have been the worst offensive line play I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, that was
an offensive lineman literally caused a fumble on purpose. Like, he reached in and grabbed the ball.
I think it was just a brain fart. I don't know what he was thinking.
So I don't know if he was trying to pull CJ Stroud forward, or he was trying to take the ball and run with it. Either way, not good. So they're not it can go two ways this season, and maybe they'll just sit right in this middle, and they'll just be kind of this middle team that's not quite good enough, or it could go better, and all of a sudden they figure it out, and they make a run at the end of the season, and there's a team that gets hot at the right time, and they're that team that you believe. They get hot at the right time, they start to figure it out. You know you've got the talent with Nico and C.J. Stroud. Who knows what they could do? Or the wheels fall off at the end of the season, and now there's a ton of questions, and we thought we had a great quarterback, but who knows? And Bobby Sloak, we got to get rid of him. All of those are on the table for the Texans right now. And so it's a frustrating thing to watch that it's not bad, but it's close to bad and it's close to great. And I don't know which way it's going to go.
It's close to bad. It's close to great. It sounds like some relationships I've been in. It's like, no, but I'm with you. I agree with your take. I think it's a great take. I think you're on. I think that's why Texans fans are anxious. And it's like, we're going to win a division. It's like, yeah, you're going to win a division. You're obviously going to win the division. And why is there still this feeling in the pit of your stomach that, like you said, this thing could get derailed pretty? You're walking the line between, like you said, disaster and, greatness potentially. And it's like, it can go either way for the Texans. I'm with you. I got faith that Bobby Slowick's got to be able to figure this thing out, the second half scoring. Got to be able to figure that out. But I say that, but it took the Texans forever, and they still haven't really figured out their offensive line issues. Now we just have a bigger problem to focus on more so than the O-line. And it's probably related to the offensive line. But the bigger problem is, hey, why y'all not scoring in the second half of games? Why y'all 26th in second half scoring? You're not going to – there's no way you're going to be able to win a playoff game like that or do anything other than win your division.
No, it's basically looking at it and realizing you've played more good football than the Chiefs have this season. They're undefeated and you're not. So what are they doing that you're not doing? And you need to learn how to do that. And I know some of that's kind of unteachable, and some of that is what's built into that.
That's championship DNA.
But that's what you have to look at and go, how are they undefeated and we're losing games like this? Because that little bit of difference is a lot.
Oh, no, they're 9th in point differential, I think. No, they're undefeated. They're like 9th in point differential. It's
They blocked a field goal to stay undefeated this week.
Amazing. Will Chanel, right? It's amazing.
That the Broncos just decided, the offensive line for the Broncos thought, you know what? It's so in the bag. Let's not block.
And it's like, man, the Kansas City Chiefs, they just believe. Like I said, they're so clutch. I told you guys, they're so clutch. They don't even, and that, what did they even score? What the score? The score was like in the teens, right?
Yeah, it was nothing. Yeah,
it's like 12 to what is something weird like that? I didn't watch the game. I saw the end of it. But that's how bad the Kansas City Chiefs have been pretty much in the first 3 quarters of games. But in the fourth quarter, as long as it's honestly, if it's within 2 touchdowns, like if they're within, you can have a 2 touchdown lead on them. It's not safe in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, they flip the switch. And they show you their championship DNA and championship pedigree. Yeah. And remember, that guy blocked the extra point in the Super Bowl, guys. Remember? I was there. That same dude. I was like, what the hell? Who blocks an extra point? That dude blocked an extra point, I believe, in the Super Bowl. Remember? Crazy. Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know. It feels like, well, they 9-0 now, right?
9-0.
When are we going to start talking about them being undefeated for the rest of the season? When are we going? We talked about it last week.
When they play a real game, a full real game.
That was a division. It's hard to beat division opponents. That's why Denver knows them really well. That's why Denver's defense is one of the best defenses in the league.
Like the Patriots were the thing that Patriots were playing such good football. You're like, oh yeah, this team can go undefeated. This Chiefs team, like if they lost every game the rest of the season, you wouldn't surprise you. Because they have not played great football at all.
No,
and they're undefeated.
That's why I think they're going to end up doing it, because they just know how to win in the end. They know how to pull it out. The clutch gene is just unbelievable with that group. Anyway, we'll get to that. We'll talk more like NFL stories, but to Tyler Bowe and the Texans, they got to figure out second half scoring, and they got to figure out. Pass protection, I think, is still an issue, but I agree with you. It was improved. It was, I know, 4 sacks. 4 sacks is improved. It was, because there weren't as many unblocked free rushers at your quarterback. Yep. And I think CJ early on had some time. And if he had Nico, it would have looked a whole lot different.
Yes.
And you see, they were just throwing, they were funneling everything to Tank Dell early on in that matchup too. So I'm still, like I said, there's no panic button, because they're going to win. It's just like they're going to win 10, 11 games, guys. And yet they still have some deficiencies that are not glaring yet. Actually, the O-line one is glaring. Yeah. So that's a glaring deficiency.
Yeah.
They're just a bad O-line, bad pass protection unit, period. But now the second half scoring thing, I think, also may be glaring. You can't win. You can't go on a playoff run with multiple glaring deficiencies where you're like the worst in the league in those categories.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where they are now. They got to fix those. All right. We'll talk about Cowboys. You know what? We'll do that on the other side. We'll talk Cowboys on the other side. We got some sound from Michael Parsons, sound from Jerry Jones. We got sound from CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys are a dumpster fire, and they're still entertaining. I'll tell you that. Even though they're not good, they do still manage to entertain. We'll discuss that on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into Rod's rant of the day, but we're just going to talk Cowboys in this segment. Cowboys receive, as I think we all could have predicted, an Old Testament, old biblical style butt whipping at the hands of the Eagles with no Dak Prescott. Of course, they're going to get whipped in that fashion, 34-6. It was, embarrassing for a lot of reasons for the Cowboys. Jerry Jones, particularly. He's feeling a little snarky these days because he's getting a lot of blowback and a lot of public criticism for decisions that he's made with the Dallas Cowboys. So here's an interaction with Jerry Jones with a reporter. I believe the reporter's question is in it, so we'll just play it for you. Here's Jerry Jones. You can tell he's a little bit frustrated, and right, understandably so, with the state of the Cowboys.
What does today's performance tell you about Dak's role in this team and what he's been doing this season?
Well, what do you mean?
Given that you saw what the team looked like without Dak, how do you, when you look at the difference, what do you think about Dak?
I don't want to be sarcastic, but are you got the same arithmetic I've got. We've won 3 games with Dak. Okay, so I'm just saying we weren't playing well with Dak at all.
If Dak cannot come back, how much does that hurt your hopes for this season?
Well, I don't want to deal in hypotheticals, but anybody that loses their top quarterback has some adjustments to make, and they're usually adjusting uphill. And so I thought that basically we'd look better tonight without Dak. I thought we'd look better on offense than we looked without Dak. Seen Cooper play better than we played tonight. Philadelphia's got a lot to do with that. That's what it is.
All right, so that's Jerry. You can tell a little frustrated, but yeah, I mean, this is a Dak. We talked about it. They were overly reliant on Dak. It was a Dak-centric offense, and in a bad way, because it wasn't even a Dak-friendly offense, just Dak-centric offense. Yeah. And they didn't have the running game, one of the worst running games in the NFL. So even those years where Cooper Rush was able to come in and win games for the Cowboys as the backup, you had a more balanced recipe to win. You had a better defense. Your defense now, your rush defense, at least one of the worst in the NFL. So you had a better defense to have complementary football, help you win games, and a better run game to help ease the burden of a backup quarterback. And I don't know, look at the skill position. You probably had better skill positions too.
Do you mean you didn't have a running back who doesn't show up to meetings, and then when he comes in this game, gets the ball poked out and gives up a touchdown for the Cowboys? Because why is he still in the league?
They should have cut him. They should have cut him. They really did. They should have cut him when that story came out last week. Yeah. They should have been like, you know what? We're starting to move in the right direction, and that's in a different direction than where Zeke is going. It's fine. Yeah. And they have not. They
put him back in the game.
They put him in
fumbled the ball in the red zone.
It's like, so yeah, I mean, isn't that basically kind of a microcosm of what the Cowboys, the decisions they continue to make that are hurting the organization?
And then get mad when you come out and they go, well, do you think so Dak was doing a pretty good job, right? Jerry, I'm setting you up to say I paid the right guy. Clearly, look, I'm not even asking you a bad question. I'm saying, look at the impact Dak has on there. And you turn around and go, no, Dak sucks too. We
pretty much,
suck. Yeah, he did. Everybody sucks, except for me.
It was a softball. And he was like, he kind of went after Dak on that. He was like, we were bad with Dak. I was like, that's true, but did you have to bring that up? Why Dak getting that straight? Dak ain't nowhere.
He's not coming back this season. You could sell him like he was playing really well.
Yeah, no, with you. That was it. It just shows he's starting to get frustrated. Things are starting to crack. Okay, we get to because I think it's more appropriate to play the CeeDee Lamb one here actually. Because during the game, I'm sure Cowboys fans remember this. They were trailing 7-3. I mean, they got blown out about 28 points, but they were trailing 7-3 at one point and facing second and goal from the Philadelphia Eagles 3. Cooper Rush had an open CeeDee Lamb in the end zone for a go-ahead score. It's like, okay, Cowboys will be doing. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb and Cooper Rush couldn't get on the same page because CeeDee Lamb missed the pass, couldn't see it because the sun was in his eyes. You could see basically him voicing that on the sidelines when they were lip reading that, hey, man, the sun got in his eyes. Cowboys set up for a field goal and would not score a point for the rest of the game. That was it. That was their best chance to score. So after the game, CeeDee Lamb was asked about, hey, what happened on that play when it looks like you and Cooper Rush had a chance to score a touchdown for the Cowboys. Here's what CeeDee Lamb had to say about the glare of the sun.
Couldn't see the ball at all. The sun. But yes, 1,000%.
You talked to Barry about that.
I mean, y'all doing my job right now.
Okay. So he was asked about, are you in favor of curtains? He's like, yeah, 1,000%. You guys are doing my job. Please get this message to Jerry Joe. That's his receiver he just paid, right? $30-something million a year to, saying, no, man, trust me, it hurts my performance and productivity. The fact that you have a stadium with the sun glaring down the field because you want beautiful pictures and aesthetics, and that's great. But what about me as a receiver being able to catch the football on the football field because you're more worried about style than substance, more worried about the aesthetics and the picture and photo ops than you are about winning games. Once again, kind of a microcosm, like you said, of kind of the Zeke thing. of the Cowboys' decision making.
Yeah. By the way, 2 touchdowns there. 2 pretty easy touchdowns. You're in the. I mean, it's never easy to score a touchdown in red zone, but Zeke has the ball, but you give it to this running back who doesn't care enough, or whatever personal problems or whatever he's going through, that he is showing up late to meetings and missing meetings completely.
Not my problem.
And you get mad because reporters report on it, and you go, I never thought anything would be that big for discipline. It's like, he's not good though. If he was good, we'd get him. He's not. He used to be good, but he hasn't been for a while. And then you still put him in the game for some reason instead of trying to give some other people a shot. Instead of signing free agents and trying to find something that may work, you put him back in the game and he fumbles. And then the next one, you can't complete a pass because your wide receiver can't see because the sun's in his eyes.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's like I said, it's all funny and it's a joke, but not in a good way. I should say that. It's a joke, but I'm sure not in a good way for Cowboys fans. Jerry Jones actually brought up the issue of the glare of the sun in the stadium when he was answering questions, and unsolicited actually said, we do know where the damn sun's going to be at our own stadium. He says, when they asked him why not put up curtains, he said, well, let's just tear the damn stadium down and build another one. You kidding me? He says, everybody's got the same thing. Every team that comes in here has the same issues. They know where the sun's going to be. Every team has the same thing. So when the Cowboys don't practice at AT&T Stadium, so they're basically kind of coming in like a lot. I guess they're more used to it than the opponent is, but they don't practice in it. So when they see it on Sundays, a lot of times, or that may be their first time seeing it other than a walkthrough. And Jerry Jones does have access to these big industrial size curtains because they put them up for WWE events and they put them up for concerts and stuff like that. So Jerry's got access to them, but Jerry literally has said, no, I want the photos.
Why don't we?
I want the look. I want the glare of the sun. It's better for the aesthetics when we're talking about it being on camera.
Why don't we just build another stadium? Jerry, we said curtains. We literally just said in the question was the solution that you already have, and you immediately have to go into, no, that's so sacrilegious to think that it's harder for us to plan against it, because even if you want to say, well, we know where it's going to be, so schematically we can try and do something to basically not throw it over the middle of the field, maybe try and run the ball down, and then we don't have a run game. But I don't know. But if you say that, but knowing that other teams, if they have to plan for it and say, okay, if the sun's there, we'll just try to do something else. They have to do that one game a year. So really they can write, whatever a play you want in there because it's one game a year. You have to do it 6 games a year. That'll be like at that time of day, 5 or 6 games a year. Mm-hmm. So you can't just always have trick plays or things set up for it to try and get something open. And if other teams know, well, you can't see the ball over the middle, they're probably not going to throw it over the middle of the field.
I'm with. They asked him about should Mike McCarthy change the way he calls plays because of the sun? And Jerry Jones said, I'm saying the world knows where the sun is. We get to know that almost a year in advance. So someone asked me about the sun, and what about the sun? Where's the moon?
God.
I'll try to find an audio for you guys, but I mean, the Cowboys are kind of cracking up under this pressure. That's pretty obvious. But it kind of comes back to the Cowboys' priorities, right? You get what you emphasize, and the Cowboys are, I would say, the number one TV star on the number one TV show in America. And I think, that being that brand, that matters more to Jerry a lot of the times than winning, because at least based on the decisions that he makes, it's more about them being, the Cowboys and being that brand and making the headlines and more style than it is about substance. And so they got to get back to some decisions that are about substance, because the Zeke one, that ain't about substance. That was a style decision. The stadium, obviously, curtains, that's you about style. Even that move they made, they trading for the wide receiver. I don't know how much substance was in that move either. The Cowboys were just trying to stay relevant. Like, now we know, like, what the hell was the point in that move? Like, what was the point in it now?
No,
seriously.
The reason they gave doesn't
add up.
Because the reason you gave was, well, we had like a high second round grade on him, so getting him for a 4th, and you go, Yeah, but we've seen him not work now.
Yeah, he's not a second. Yes, he wasn't worthy of the second round pick. They admitted that. That's why
they agreed. You scouted him poorly too. But you're doubling down that your bad scouting was bad. All of it is just done in a very. We do not think twice in the Cowboys organization. We think once, and that's the way it's going to be. Yep. And if we were wrong, well, deal with it. Because we are not thinking twice. There is no adjustments coming to the Dallas Cowboys
Even
organization.
The Zeke thing's like, no. It was like, do you admit you were wrong about Zeke? Like, no, we're not going to admit we were wrong. Zeke, get out there. And it's like, well, you said he was distracted and not showing the blade. And it's like, nope, go out there, Zeke. And it's like, okay, those are just bad decisions, bad organizational decisions. Can we get one more piece of audio here from Micah Parsons, and we'll move on here to what the facts, what the stats. So Micah was asked about, I believe he's asked about Mike McCarthy here in this piece of audio, and he actually starts talking about how he feels bad, not necessarily for Mike McCarthy, but feels bad more so for his teammates who have to endure such a terrible season for the Cowboys.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's of course going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
That's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But all coaching aside, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But guys, I kind of feel bad for guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year on their way out. Because that's what I wanted to hold the trophy for. You want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure he didn't mean anything bad, but people are going to take that a certain way.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Mike McCarthy, I don't know if he knows everybody on the defense. I don't think Mike McCarthy worries about the defense. Fair. I don't think he cares. It's one of the reasons why he's not a great head coach. But is I don't think he's a full team. I think he's an offensive head coach, and he deals with that a lot. Because he had Dan Quinn, which Dan Quinn was a guy running the defense. Now they bring in Mike Zimmer. He's running that defense. So I don't know how much he actually, is in meetings or dealing with Micah Parsons. So, Micah Parsons that dude's an offense. You don't care about us.
No, you're probably right about that. I think you're all right about that. So maybe it wasn't necessarily with him having angst. It's just like, I don't even really see that dude. I don't talk to that dude.
Yeah. I talk to Jerry more than I talk to Mike.
I believe that.
Yeah.
It's part of the problem, and I do believe that. That's probably the issue, and I do believe that, no doubt. All right, there you go. So the Cowboys are not happy, and they shouldn't be currently with the state of affairs there. All right, we come back. We got what the facts, what the stats on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to what the facts, what the stats. How about this stat? We're just talking about the Dallas Cowboys and how miserable the Cowboys have been at home. For the first time in NFL history, a team has trailed by 20 or more points in 5 straight home games, including the playoffs, with the Eagles beating the Cowboys by 28 points. The Cowboys had been tied for the longest streak with the 2013-14 Raiders with 4 in a row. Now, unfortunately, it is 5. Man, those home games. Maybe that's a big part of why the fans are so despondent. They don't show up at home for the fans. At least they haven't in a while. Mike Tomlin shows up, and the Steelers. How about the Steelers? Big win over the Commanders. We talked about that on Friday. That was going to be a statement win for the Steelers, and a hell of a win by Mike Tomlin and his crew. Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are now 3-0 straight up and against the spread as an underdog this season. And if you'll look at it since 2003, Tomlin remains the best coach against the spread as a dog of the 156 total coaches in that time span.
No,
best coach against the
and what's
spread.
crazy about that is in the fourth quarter, Preston Smith, Mike Williams, guys they just traded for, made big plays.
Balling out for him.
They just were big plays. So it's not doing the whole game. But a lot of teams didn't play anybody that they just brought in. They didn't put them in that offense or defense. And those two guys both were making big plays just to tell you how they can kind of come in and get guys ready to do and put them in the moments they need to put them in. Mike Williams, I think, had the game winning touchdown.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch that game too. I saw kind of like the end of it, but that's awesome. Like I said, we talked about this with Mike Tomlin. If it's a 1-score game, man, he's the best in the NFL in those 1-score games, in those clutch moments. I think they found something with Russell Wilson. It looks like they found something, at least the offense, because all they need in Pittsburgh, because of the defense, it's a top 10 defense, maybe even top 5 in some categories. All they really need is you to can you score anywhere from 24 to 28 points? And that's really kind of the sweet spot for the Steelers. And Russell Wilson, 3 touchdowns, 1 reception. He wasn't great, didn't even have 200 yards, but he manages the game so well, and that's what they really need.
Yeah.
He's about to manage the game and make some clutch plays on third down, in the red zone, stuff like that. Russell Wilson can do that.
Yeah, and he still has a really great deep ball.
And yeah, he does. Moonshot, baby.
That moonshot deep ball just falls right into the receiver's hands. That's one of those throws that not a lot of people can make. And so if you add somebody who can do that and then game manage for the rest, he can do enough for him.
So that Mike Williams throw that was his only catch then.
Yeah.
Of the game.
Yeah.
Wow. He had 1 catch for 32 yards.
Yeah.
And that was it. Oh, okay. So that is clutch. So the only time he actually made a real impact on the stat sheet was when they needed him most. That's a hell of a
when you're right there at the end. But that's because again, he probably doesn't know a ton of the playbook.
No, he doesn't.
But if you just go, all right, this is what we need. I can, how we played that Joe Burrow sound where he said, I can tell Khalil Herbert what to do. Mm-hmm. You can basically go over and go, this is what I need you to do.
Yeah.
So we just need you to fly. We just need you to fly route. We just need you to go. And we trust that you're big enough to go get it done. But yeah, for him to be able to step up in that moment and make a trade and you go for it. And yeah, it's a 32-yard touchdown for Mike Williams.
Wow.
With 2:22 left in the game. 2 minutes and 22 seconds left.
Okay.
Yeah, he catches that touchdown.
Clutch. That's pretty.
I can't remember, but I remember because I was watching on Red Zone and so you're flipping around in those first window, and Preston Smith makes a play, and he's a guy that was brought in too. That trade deadline, I think a 7th round pick or something for him, and come in and just, hey, we need another rusher here. Come on,
Steelers, man. I don't know how for real they are, but they still keep winning. That was a big win. 1-point win over the Commanders. Getting back to what the stats, what the facts. The Vikings won. I think it was a game. It was a 12-7 win, I believe it was, over Jacksonville. How about this stat about Minnesota? The Vikings are the first team to win a game with 0 touchdowns and at least 3 turnovers or more since 2006. Teams had lost 195 straight games in games in which they didn't score a touchdown and had at least 3 turnovers. How the hell did they win that game? I didn't watch that one, so I don't know, but that's pretty wild too. More facts. What the facts says. How about this? the Chiefs have not allowed a single point when trailing in the fourth quarter this season. The Chiefs in the fourth quarter when trailing, 0 points allowed, 20 total yards allowed, and 0 giveaways. So they don't have a turnover in the fourth quarter, and they haven't allowed a point in the fourth quarter when trailing. They're clutch. They really are. And the defense actually may be more clutch than the offense these days. Speaking of the Chiefs and the offense, I told you DeAndre Hopkins being added to the equation really has helped out Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce, 32 receptions in his last 3 games. Second most by a tight end in a 3-game span in NFL history. Only tight end with more was Jason Witten in 2012 when he had 33 in a 3-game span. So now you got a true number 1 wide receiver. He got gravity. Safeties have to roll coverage his way, or they double him, DeAndre Hopkins, and you leave the middle of the field wide open for Travis Kelce, for him to just basically beat zone coverage or beat man coverage, and he can do it almost any way he wants to. They don't really have defined routes. It's just Kelce gets open and Patrick Mahomes finds him. All right. And another stat about the Vikings and their 12-7 win. Teams with 0 touchdowns and at least 3 turnovers were 0 and 147 since 2010. The Vikings are the first team to win such a game since the Packers in 2006 with 0 touchdowns and at least 3 turnovers. Crazy. It's wild. All right. So there you go. That's what the facts, what the stats. Got some more of those. We'll save those for later on in the week. Let's get to the break. We come back. We'll get into some Texas Longhorn conversation. We'll talk about their big win over the Florida Gators. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian when we go behind the burnt orange curtain. We'll talk about the play that I think turned the game for Texas. It was early on in the game, but this may have been the gutsiest call that I've ever seen Steve Sarkisian make. We'll get into that. We'll also talk about Quinn Ewers' performance. It was a performance for the ages. He set a record or touchdown passes in that game, career high. We'll dive into that, and we'll hear from Steve Sarkisian as well. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a smooth Monday, but also Veterans Day out there. So we want to wish everybody out there a happy Veterans Day, but also smooth Monday from Patrick, my co-host, the Ideallionaire, intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who may have had a tough weekend. Also meant to ease you into the work week, but since it is a holiday, hopefully a lot of you out there got the day off, so you don't have to worry about the traumatic case of the Mondays you usually have to deal with. So wishing everybody out there happy Veterans Day. But appreciate Patrick hooking us up with the musically themed days of the week, as he always does on a Smooth Soul Monday, but also coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted at the Horn ATX. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. Who is the MVP for Texas against Florida? And Quinn Ewers, we knew was going to run away with this one. 77% right now for Quinn Ewers. Trey Moore getting a little love, though. Good to see him get some love. 13% and 5% each for Jaden Blue and Andrew Makuba.
It's definitely Quinn. That was a hell of a game, and it could have been even a more prolific performance. DeAndre Moore bobbled one deep shot, could have been an extra touchdown. He dropped another deep ball that was placed around the money in the bread basket. I mean, you could be talking about Quinn, who had 330 something yards. He could have had over 400 yards. Could have been, damn near 450, something like that, if those passes had been caught too. And so 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and Quinn looked as good as he's looked since the injury. Hadn't seen him look that good. Honestly, the Michigan game is the only game I think he's looked better. As is, in my opinion, this season. I think that may be the only game where he's looked better than he looked in this game versus Florida.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's all right? With him playing one series in the second half.
Yep, right about that too. He start, and it was a shaky start for the offense a little bit, considering they didn't score on that first drive, drove it down, missed a field goal, had the sack and the tackle for loss early on. We'll talk about where that game turns. I think Sark, really, his feel of the game is something that I've criticized, that he needs to have a better feel for the game and knowing when the game is going to turn, sensing the momentum shifts in some of these games, knowing his team and then knowing the opponent. And I think in this game, his feel of the game might have been the best that I've seen it. And I'll talk about why that is the case. We'll get into that when we talk Texas football. But first, we'll get to the Horn headlines. So let's get educated. Let's get updated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs dropped their Saturday matchup with the Jazz 111-110. With Victor Wembanyama racking up 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 blocks in the loss. Alfred Şengün had 27 points and 10 rebounds in the Rockets' 101-99 win over the Pistons, and the Mavs lost the Nuggets 122-120 after a Michael Porter Jr. shot with 6 seconds left gave Denver the lead. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Kings, and the Rockets host the Wizards. In college basketball, the Longhorns picked up a 90-59 win over Houston Christian on Friday. Trey Johnson once again showed out with 28 points in the win. Over the weekend, number 1 Kansas held home court with a 92-89 win over North Carolina. Number 8 Baylor topped number 16 Arkansas 72-67, and number 11 Auburn upset number 4 Houston 74-69. Texas is back in action Tuesday against Chicago State. And Texas women's basketball started their season with a 119-47 win over Southeast Missouri, with 6 Longhorns scoring in double digits. In college football, Texas routed Florida 49-17 on Saturday. Elsewhere, number 3 Georgia lost to number 16 Ole Miss 28-10. Number 4 Miami was upset by Georgia Tech 28-23, and number 11 Alabama took out number 15 LSU 42-13. Texas climbs to number 3 in the latest AP poll. Texas women's soccer took home the SEC championship Sunday with a 1-0 win over South Carolina, and they now wait for the NCAA tournament brackets to be revealed today, with games starting this weekend. And in the NFL, the Chiefs remained undefeated after a blocked field goal attempt as time expired to top the Broncos 16-14. The Steelers beat the Commanders 28-27, stopping Washington inches short of a first down in the game. The Cowboys never got out of the gates against the Eagles, losing 34-6. And the Texans gave up a 16-point halftime lead to lose to the Lions 26-23 on Sunday Night Football. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a 58-yard field goal with 1:56 left to take the lead for Houston, and Detroit was able to get their game winner just inside the uprights as time expired. Tonight, the Dolphins take on the Rams on Monday Night Football, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. We appreciate those. Let's hit the Texas Longhorns and their victory over Florida Gators. A couple of points I want to make here, and we'll hear from Steve Sarkisian a little bit, and then we'll dive into some more of Steve Sarkisian's post-game audio when we go behind the burn orange curtain. But I thought there was one central play, in my opinion, that ended up being the most important play of the game for Texas versus Florida. I think it turned the game too. Now, it was early, but I do think it turned the game, and I think it was, in my opinion, the gutsiest call that maybe Sark has made since he's been at Texas, and he's made some gutsy calls. But to go for it on 4th and 1 on the first touchdown drive for Texas, their second drive of the game, but first touchdown drive, first scoring drive, it's 4th and 1 at your own 24-yard line. And guys, I've been watching football a long time. I can't recall how many times I've seen a team go for it on 4th down that deep in their own territory. I'm sure there have been some instances of it. Of course, I'm sure there have been. I don't recall many of them at any level of football. It is considered arrogance of the highest order for you to go for it, or disrespect of the highest order of the opposing team, for you to go for it on 4th and 1 at your own 24-yard line. Because if you don't make it, you are just giving the other team points. You might as well, you definitely gave them 3. You might have given them 7, depending on how it goes. And usually the football guys, they make you pay for being arrogant, and they almost made Texas pay for its arrogance in that call, because when Texas goes for it, they don't make it initially. And by the way, not only was Sark had to show a lot of testicular fortitude to go for it on 4th and 1, but he put a freshman out there. A freshman, Jared Gibson, out there was the main running back. And you can tell the broadcast team didn't even think he was going to go for it. They thought, oh, he's going to try it. He's trying to get him to jump off sides. Watch the play clock here, guys. And they're like, oh, he's going for it. And initially, they don't get it. Initially, Texas stonewalled right at the line of scrimmage. And then the extra second effort from Baby Rhino and Jared Gibson, from Gunnar Helm, who ends up pushing him. I think on that second effort, he ends up kind of pushing him from the back. Also, I believe Juan Davis gets on it. And then you see Longhorns just trying to push him over the line of scrimmage. And they do. He finally ends up getting 2 yards, and Texas converts. And to me, I think that was, I think some of it was emotional. You go think of what led up to that play, right? First drive of the game, Texas comes out. Obviously, they're on the script, right? It's a 40-play script at Sarkisian. So obviously, they're on the script, and they're moving the football, right? They're moving it. They got a 10-yard gain, 10-yard pass to DeAndre Moore. High early down pass rates too, like I talk about. So you're getting back to your identity, but they're throwing it. 10-yard gain to Moore, a 12-yard gain to Moore, a 20-yard gain to Gunnar Helm, Wisner with a 6-yard run, 4-yard pass to Juan Davis. They're ahead of the chains, and they're moving the football. On 1st and 10 next, Wisner with a 7-yard reception, and they're ahead of the chains. And they're moving the football, and it looks like, man, okay, Texas might have their mojo back. They're moving. This is good. They look like they're going to go down and definitely get points on the board here. And then there's a 2nd and 3 right after that Wisner 7-yard reception, and they get the 7-yard tackle for loss for Trey Wisner. And it immediately took me back to what Sark brought up last week when he said, yeah, the way for us to get our mojo back, he said, it's really not to do anything. We just got to stay on schedule, and we got to stay ahead of the chains. He said, when we get explosive plays and big plays, chunk plays on 1st and 2nd down, he said our offense is basically damn near unstoppable because they don't have to worry about 3rd down. They don't have to see 3rd down. Well, the late, great Bill Walsh say the best 3rd down call is the one you don't have to make. So that's where they were, right? They'd been rolling. 1st down, 1st down, 1st down, 1st down. They had 4 first downs in a row. They didn't even see a 2nd down on the first 4 plays. 1st down, 1st down, 1st down, 1st down. They get a 2nd and 4, then another 1st down. 2nd and 3. And then that's that Trey Wisner tackle for loss. And that's the first time they get behind the chains, and then they get to 3rd and long. In that 3rd and long, remember, they're confused at first. 3rd and long, initially had to call a timeout. It's like 3rd and long, they didn't even know what they want to do. Then they get 3rd and 10, then there's your sack. You get your 2 negative plays, that killed your drive, and it killed your chance for a touchdown, and then you get the missed field goal. So I think Sark initially is just frustrated, thinking, what the hell just happened? We just drove down the field with basically almost no opposition. Everything was working. We get 1 negative play, and then that leads us to 3rd and long, and then the 3rd and long, we get the sack, and then we miss a field goal, and it's like none of it really happened. It's like, so we didn't get our mojo back in that first drive? Like, what? I think he thought to himself, they were so close. If not for that negative play, they were so close to getting not only points on the board, but getting a touchdown to start the game. And then the next drive, offensively, Sark's like, okay, all right, we definitely going to, get our mojo back on this drive. 1st and 10, incomplete to Isaiah Bond. Quinn and Isaiah Bond are a little bit off. Then there's the incomplete pass to Gunnar Helm. Remember, they dropped the defensive end, and he basically drops into the window where they're going to throw the crossing route to Gunnar Helm. Almost intercepts it. Probably should have intercepted it, honestly. Just a really good defensive call. And Quinn didn't see him dropping from the opposite side of the formation. And then they get a 3rd and 10, again, 3rd and long. And then Quinn Ewers has to scramble for 9 yards because the protection breaks down. Give it for Quinn. Quinn did a great job in that play. Made the right decision on the pressure. And then starts thinking to himself, you got to be effing kidding me. Am I going to punt now? And then if I punt now, who knows where the momentum goes in this game? If Florida could, because Florida wants to try to run the rock. And by the way, I think Florida could have had success running the rock early. Remember, on that first drive for Florida, run the football, first drive, period, offensively, they get a 5-yard gain on the pass. Jaden Barr runs for 9 yards. And then they have a negative play on 1st down. And then you force them to have to throw because they get in 2nd and long and they get in 3rd and long and they got to throw the football. And I think Sark's thinking, well, if they can stay ahead of the chains, they're just going to try to run the football. And I think Sark knew what I knew. That's the best group of running backs you faced all year. If they want to go Mississippi State on you and just run the ball and control the clock, there's a chance they could do it. They ended up running for damn near 200 yards on you. But they were irrelevant yards that didn't matter. But what if they would have mattered early if Texas had let the game stay close? If Texas didn't pull away with complimentary football and they just want to run the football at 4 or 5 yards a pop, they actually had the running backs to do it. Could have been a different game, but it wasn't because Sark was so aggressive with scones the size of smart cars, his testicular fortitude that allowed him to go for it on 4th down with a freshman. And the reason the freshman thing is important is because he understood, like I think we've stated on this show, Jared Gibson's your best downhill runner. He's a better downhill runner than Jaden Blue. He's a better downhill runner than Trey Wisner. And you couldn't afford for Trey Wisner to start trying to get patient on that run. You couldn't afford for Jaden Blue to try to pop it outside on that run. No. You need somebody that's going to be able to run straight ahead and get you the 2 yards, the 1 yard you need to convert. And Sark, in his mind as a coach, he's like, well, he's a freshman, but he gives me my best chance to get that 1 yard. And so he put the freshman out there. And so it was he had faith in his players. He had faith in his culture. That was a hell of a call by Sark. Gutsiest call he's had. Like I said, took scones inside of smart cars, and they end up converting. And think about it, right? This is how you know it was right after that. This was all on the script. Right after they converted that 4th and 1. What's the next play? The Isaiah Bond 44-yarder. He had it ready to go. He had that in and around, that elaborate fake reverse end around. He had it ready to go. He knew exactly. And by the way, you got to call that on the right place on the field, right? You got to be on the right place in the field to call that in and around the way he did, and he did. And it was a brilliant play call. He had it ready to go, and that was out of the pony package. Ryan Niblett was in there. Ryan Niblett's your guy that ends up having multiple. I think he initially has a jet motion, and then he has an orbit motion. So he ends up being in motion multiple times on the same play. But my point is, Sark had that in and around ready to go. And then you end up scoring out of the pony package, by the way, on that same drive with the 29-yarder to Matthew Golden, which was also a schemed up play because it was a stalk block and go. So that drive, I don't know, you don't get that drive without the 4th and 1 call. But to me, that was the call that really turned the game because it was still a competitive game. And who knows how, I think we talked about this with Mississippi State and we talked about this with the Vanderbilt game. How close were those games to being a huge blowout landslide wins for Texas? They were pretty close. It was just like 3 or 4 plays here and there. There was a penalty here, or it was a missed opportunity here where Texas couldn't go on that quintessential Sark run we talked about. Well, in this game, the Sark run pretty much was the whole damn game. Whole damn game was a Sark run, but it started because Sark decided to roll the dice and said, "No, I'm not going to allow them to get any momentum. I'm not going to give Florida any life at all." And he took all the other variables and factors out of the equation and said, I can control this 4th and 1. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to allow any other factors or variables to become more and more, impactful in this matchup than it needs to be. I'll take control over the momentum. And I think it was a feel of the game. I think he understood if I don't get this and I punt it back to them and they decide to go on a 5-6 minute drive, and then we're in a ball game now. Yep. This is a game. And then who knows what could happen, because it should have been a pick. Remember, Quinn always threw a pick like earlier.
Yep.
Like right, but that like a play, that series before, you almost had a pick. So I think starts thinking, well, anything could happen at this point. Let me try my best to try to put the gas, the foot to the gas, and try my best, pedal to the metal, and let's try to pull away from this Florida team. And I think ultimately it was a smart move to do it. It worked. It was smart because it worked.
Yeah, let's try and show this offense that I do have confidence in them. They are playing well. They had one bad play. It spiraled into another bad play and a missed field goal. But that first drive, you were moving the ball just fine.
Yep.
You were walking right down the field on them. It was going great. And then all of a sudden you mess up one. Trey Weisner makes one bad decision, and that spirals into a sack. It spirals into a missed field goal. And now all of a sudden you're back on your heels. You get a stop. You get the ball back. So here I am. I'm going to put in the freshman, and not just the true freshman who in SEC play has 6 carries.
That's crazy. And most of those, I bet, were early on, right?
He had 4 against Mississippi State. He had 2 against Oklahoma.
Yeah. So they was
he had not touched the football in about a month. In about a month, he hadn't touched a football in a game. And his next touch is a 4th and 1 from their own 24-yard line.
Wow.
Which you're basically, if you don't get, you're giving them points.
You give them points to start the game. And I think Sark probably knew, that they were going to beat them anyway, but still pretty good.
Yeah, you're down then.
You're down.
And you also know that your offense, again, that's a blow to your offense that you put him out there and put the trust in him. Mm-hmm. And, man, the mojo may not be back yet. But all of that came together, and he was able to make that big play, make that call, and you love to see it because it did. It just seemed like that took this cloud off of the Texas offense that's kind of been hanging over them a little bit. Mm-hmm. And even though they've looked better, just not had that full look of what this team looked like early, and it felt like that pushed that cloud away.
You're right.
And from that point on, they went, oh, yeah. Oh, we could do that. I forgot we could do this.
I agree. It's like he exercised the demons in that play.
Yeah.
That they had been dealing with. Because you're right. That was that play brought the mojo back. That's the play that really the mojo came back with the 44-yard run and then the 29-yard golden touchdown. But I don't know if you get that play. Well, I know you don't get that play. But unless Sark gives you that 4th and 1, I think that was him doing his best to conjure up the mojo.
Yeah.
Like, no, we're going to get it. It's there. We just saw it on the first drive. We were right there. If we'd have scored, it'd have been everybody's happy, everybody's hype, everybody's happy, and everybody's talking about, man, now that's the way the offense is supposed to look. And instead, we ended up missing a field goal and having a couple of negative plays. And he's like, no, I'm not going to allow, like you said, the negative thoughts. I'm not going to allow the insecurity. I'm not going to allow the crowd. I'm not going to allow anybody to venture into that negative space. I can control it here at 4th and 1, and I'm going to control it. And he conjured up the mojo. That 4th and 1 play, that's the reason you got the mojo back. The mojo was the 44-yarder, and then that drive. By the way, the pony package is also, that was deliberate. He needed a way to get the mojo back, and he chose the pony package.
Yeah.
Something I've been preaching about for 3 years. Think about that. He could have chose anything. He could have chose 11 personnel, 12 personnel. Those are his babies. But he get the mojo back right after the 4th and 1 play. He went pony package, y'all. Somebody's been listening. He went pony package. Come on now. I've been saying it for it's your most explosive, your most effective, and your most efficient personnel grouping. And this season, you haven't been able to use it because of the injuries. But you don't think a man as deliberate and as methodical and as meticulous as Steve Sarkisian knows that you only ran it 6 plays the whole damn game, guys? You ran pony package 6 plays the whole game. 3 of them on that drive alone.
Yeah. But that's again, I need explosive plays. So he got the 4th and 1. And then how do I get the mojo back? Explosive plays. And where my explosive plays come from?
He went to the pony.
And then once one explosive play happened, then there was another and another and another and another.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I look at it, I'm looking at that drive where you scored on that. Yeah, the one where the Matthew Golden 29-yard touchdown with the 44-yard bun run on that drive. And so your 44-yard run, that came out of the pony package. Your 29-yard touchdown came out of the pony package. And then when you score the 50-yarder to Trey Wisner, also out of the pony package. Sark knew. I mean, I'm telling you, he knows. Whether it's great minds think alike or he listens, he knows that the pony package, it does provide a element of explosivity that you don't get out of other personal groups. And it's out of the past, which is weird because the run game's not really working this year out of the pony package. But I digress. Say that for a different time. But let's hear from Sark about that play and about that gutsy call to go for it on 4th and 1 and what went into the thought process of it. Here is Steve Sarkisian.
I believe in our players, and we felt good about the stuff that we had in short yardage for the game. They give me the confidence and belief in the way they execute it in practice. And so I really didn't blink. I was going for it. Our analytical guy told me what the book had said we were supposed to do. But I was already kind of in the mode of let's go for it. I knew there was a lot of football left to be played. And so, we remain aggressive. I don't ever want to lose our stinger, but we want to be, smart with what we do. And so, made the decision and were able to extend the drive.
All right. So Sark was asked about, that book. Apparently he said the book said we're good to go for it. Did the book say go for it? Here's what Sark had to say.
It said to go.
Okay. Just to clarify.
So if we didn't make it, I would have said the book said to go. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
He says the book said to go for it. I've never seen a coach's book on the analytics and when they go for it and when they shouldn't. So I'll admit I've not been privy to that. I just can't think a lot of coaches' analytical model is telling them to go for it on 4th and 1 at their own 24-yard line. There ain't no damn way. So I'll give Sark a lot of credit. He's got a different book than everybody
the
else.
Book said put in Jarrett Gibson too.
Exactly. Yeah. What does the book say about getting into a freshman who you said hadn't touched the ball? And
He had 6 carries in SEC play. They were 4 against Mississippi State and 2 against Oklahoma.
Wow. But you know what? He did that against. Now Wingo had played more, but he remember that 4th and 2 against Georgia. We puts in Wingo and they run the ending around with Wingo, and you're like, what? That was a gutsy play call, and it worked. When it works, it's a brilliant play call too. Give Sark credit for that. The other main point or headline coming out of that game, now in addition to that play call kind of being I think it was the magic. It was his kind of a magic elixir to get the mojo back. I think the most important ingredient was that 4th and 1. It there's no doubt about it. You don't get the mojo back that early in the game without that 4th and 1 from Sark. But Quinn's performance, there's no question, was spectacular. I mean, he was as close to being back to the Michigan version of Quinn that we've seen since the injury. And it does track that he was still dealing with lingering effects of the injury. And that's why you saw the regression. He was better versus Vanderbilt with more time to heal. You get a bye week, and then coming out of the bye week versus Florida, he looks even better. Was he perfect? No, he missed a couple of throws. I can think of them now, but think about the the deep ball that was now infused back into the offense. He had 5 passes of 20 yards or more down the field, completed 2 of them, both of them to Matthew Golden, but it should have been 4 or 5 guys. He should have had the best passing performance in regards to the deep ball. He should have had the best deep ball passing performance of his career if DeAndre Moore catches 1 or both of those footballs. He'd have been 4 or 5 on deep passes, and would have had 3 touchdowns on deep passes. So I think ultimately you start looking at Quinn's performance. I think a lot of it was just, or at least his regression the last couple of weeks, and now his performance after that Florida game. And I just think it was the injury. I think he's as healthy as he's been all year. He looked that healthy. The precision passes, the timing, the touch, the layering, it all seemed to be back. Now, he was not under a lot of pressure because Florida didn't put him under a ton of pressure. So that still remains to be seen how he's going to handle pressure. But there's no doubt, if you look at the overall production in the game and just look at his presence in the pocket, I think it might be his best game that we've seen, or the best he's looked since the Michigan game. I don't know if he's looked, Michigan's the only game I think he's looked better than this game versus Florida. And if you can get this Quinn, you can win a national title with Quinn playing like this. When we witnessed the regression, I don't know if you could win a national title with Quinn playing the way he played versus, Oklahoma, definitely not Georgia, of course, and even Vandy. I don't know if you win a national title with that quarterback. That quarterback that we saw on Saturday, you can win a national title with that guy. Yep, especially with the defense being what it is. And the truth is with Quinn, I think ultimately for him, and people will talk about him not having the deep ball aspect of his game and that being something he struggles with. It was good in this game, but I do think Sark's offense is still the basic the basic rules of it and kind of the basic identity of it are still the same. He had 78 yak yards out of his passing yards, out of his 300 something pass yards. 78% of them were yak yards in this game versus Florida. 77% of his passing yards versus Vandy were yak yards after the catch. So it's still pretty much the same premise. Sark just dialed up more schemed open deep throws. Think about DeAndre Moore's deep passes. They are double moves, the ones that he drops. The Matthew Golden first touchdown is a stalk block and go, which makes sure he's the primary read, probably the only read on that throw, right? They fake the swing screen and they throw the stalk block and go to the slot receiver. Like I think 2 other, Ryan Wingo has scored on that. DeAndre Moore had a deep pass on that. It's one of the staples in Sark's offense. So 3 of the 5 were definitely schemed open deep shots. And I would say that 4 of the 5 were kind of schemed open because Matthew Golden's other deep touchdown was a switch route where essentially the 2 receivers, they intersect and they cross, and that confuses the coverage of the defensive backs. So I just think Sark was very judicious, and I think he was very deliberate in the deep shots that Texas wanted to take, even though against Vandy, Vandy wasn't giving Texas a lot of opportunity to throw it deep, and Sark was, I think a little bit frustrated with the media calling him out or questioning him on the lack of verticality in the offense. And he said, hey, if they come up and they're a little bit more aggressive, they will throw it over the top of them. Well, in this game, he didn't allow the game plan from Florida to dictate the verticality in the offense. He schemed it open. And I think that's what he should be doing going forward. Scheme it open. If they're not going to give it to you, there's still ways to take shots. And in this game, they still took shots, even though Florida didn't necessarily give it to them. All right, there you go. So that's the kind of 2 main points. There's another main point that we'll bring up about the game that I saw, and I think it goes to the culture of the team. We'll talk about that on the other side when we go behind the Burnos curtain. We'll also hear from Steve Sarkisian about their win over the Florida Gators. All that and more right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn, Rod Babers here. Let's talk about my friend and my dentist, Dr. Greg Eckert. I owe him and his great team a huge debt of gratitude. I initially went there just for a routine cleaning and checkup, and while they were doing their very thorough checkup, they found that my wisdom teeth, all of them, were growing in sideways. They were impacting my molars. They were doing all types of damage. I was on the verge of a disastrous situation. If I hadn't gone to Dr. Eckert and his team at that time, who knows how bad it could have gotten. Well, they acted quickly. They made sure that I was educated and informed about the entire process. They got the procedure scheduled. I was back at work within a couple of days, and now thanks to Dr. Eckert and his team, my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better, and I owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And folks, hopefully for you, it's not as serious as having all of your wisdom teeth removed, or hopefully for you, it's pretty routine and it's a pretty simple procedure and checkup. But if it is something very serious, you're in great hands with Dr. Eckert and his team. And no matter if it's general dentistry or teeth whitening or dentures, porcelain crowns, veneers, dental implants, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to ensure you're getting the best quality dental care available. That's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. And right now, because of their technological advances, they can actually get you a brand new smile in just one day, permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures first until they complete your permanent smile. You'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It's a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, don't freak out. Just call Dr. Eckert today to learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. It's a brand new smile in just one day. Sounds too good to be true. It's not. It's just Dr. U. It's a complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose but so much to gain, because a confident smile can truly change your life, and he wants to change your life for the better. Dr. Eckert did the same for me. He can do the same for you. So give him a call, 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166. You want to use those benefits before the year's up and you lose those benefits, and Dr. Eckert and his team can show you how to do that to make it work for you and your family. That's dreckert.com, DRUECKERT.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get to some Steve Sarkisian audio from the post game here, talking about their win over the Florida Gators. Quinn Ewers, of course, was the biggest topic of conversation for Longhorn fans after the game. Had a great performance, throwing for over 300 yards, 5 touchdowns, a career high in passing touchdowns in the game for Quinn. Here's Sark when he was talking about building Quinn's confidence with that performance versus the Florida Gators.
I thought Quinn played fantastic today, and I thought he played great last, 2 weeks ago against Vanderbilt. He just had a little bit of bad luck with some tip balls, but he was on point again today. We had, unfortunately, a couple drops for him, but he was on point. He really navigated the offense as much as it was just throwing the ball. I just felt like our rhythm, our tempo, the intent in which we were playing the game, the ball was going to the right guys on time. They were catchable balls where they could run with it. So I just think he's come into the game with a real sense of confidence coming into the game. And I can only imagine coming out of a game like this, that his confidence is even better.
Yeah, I mean, they completed passes to so many different receivers. You look at it. I mean, Jaden Blue, Matthew Golden, Weisner, Bond, Helm, Bowden, Moore, Juan Davis, Wingo, Amari Nightblack, and nobody had more than 3 receptions. They had 5 players with 3 receptions. And nobody had more than that. Jaden Blue is your leading receiver with 67 receiving yards. Hey, guys, by the way, remember my prediction that you would have a different leading receiver in at least half the games so far this year? Well, through 9 games, 6 different players have led you in receiving. You're already there. And Bowden still could do it. Bowden could be one of those guys. I could see Bowden now leading you in receiving one game too, if he has a breakout game potentially. But yeah, there's no way any other team in the country can say that. There's no way.
No, not anybody who's good.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not anybody who's good. Yeah, I agree.
You say when you're like, well, that guy had 41 game, and the other guy had 37 and another.
Yeah. There's, like I said, that is so crazy. It's definitely never happened in Texas football history. Anyway, but the reason that they could complete so many passes, so many players, and so many different pass catchers is because the offensive line did hold up. They had a much better performance, a bounce back performance in this game. Only allowed 1 sack after allowing 11 in the previous 2 games combined. Here is Sark when he was asked about the offensive line and what he thought about the way they performed versus Florida.
Well, it's key to the drill. I think any good team I've been a part of, the offensive line is kind of on the front line, figuratively speaking. It's like they're the ones that kind of set a lot of the tone for what we do. We can design all sorts of plays, run game, pass game, screens, but if you can't block them, the game gets hard. And we don't play 7-on-7, and so we've got to be really good at the line of scrimmage. And I think that they've been challenged, and I think they've responded at a high level, and that they've responded too because there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of pride in that group, a lot of guys who have played winning football, and I think they showed up today and played a brand of football that we're used to seeing.
All right, yeah. Speaking of that brand of football, you didn't really need the running game to assert itself. I think, from my opinion, the running game kind of is what it is. But when the offense is clicking, the running game just kind of complements the passing game. But with Jerry Gibson getting another 100-yard performance and being trusted in a critical moment on that 4th and 1, there's some people asking Sark whether could we see a shakeup in the running back room with Jerry Gibson now being added as another potential element in the running game for Texas. Here's what Sark had to say.
I think that's a great point. We made it. It was a real conscious effort coming into the game to say, hey, let's see Jarek back in the fold of what it looked like early in the year when he kind of had to play, because I think he provides a little different, change of pace for us. It's a little bit more of a downhill physical running style. And then you're able to get Blue on the edge. You're able to get Trey on the edge. And then you're able to utilize both those guys in the passing game too. And they're real weapons receiving the ball for us. So I think it's a very versatile room that we have. We just have to make sure that we're tapping into the versatility of all the players that we have.
Yeah, and he's right about that versatility there. I'm hoping that they can use the pony package a little bit more. If you add a Jerry Gibson to the mix, helps to have a power element to the pony package. Right now, Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue pretty much represent the same threat to a defense out of the pony package. You want somebody that can run downhill and also somebody to be able to hurt him on the perimeter, kind of a power element and a speed element, lightning thunder type element. And I think Jerry Gibson can do that. I love the fact that they broke out the pony package though. You basically averaged 21 yards per play out of the pony package in that game versus Florida. And you in the first half, it was responsible for only 6 plays, I believe, in the first half, and yet it was responsible for over a third of your yards in the first half. 6 plays works every. It's like the Sex Panther. It's 6% of the time it works every time. You see, I would always say run it a little bit more. But here is Sark when he was asked about Isaiah Bond being added. Speaking of explosivity and explosive plays, adding Isaiah Bond back to the mix, and what kind of big play potential that you added once you put him back into the lineup.
Well, I mean, obviously he had a couple really big explosive plays. The reverse, I think, was 40 something yards on the reverse. The screen, he's able to take that for a touchdown and make a guy miss. And what he does, I think, is add to the speed factor that we have on offense. He's got elite speed. DeAndre Moore's got elite speed. Jaden Blue played really fast today. Trey Wisner played fast. And so when we can spread the field a little bit and it not feel like we're so condensed and it's hard, that we want people to feel our speed. We want people to fear our speed. And when they play back, now some of those underneath things, we can create space for our guys to catch and run. But also when they do come up, that we have those opportunities to take shots down the field, which we did that today as well. So I just thought kind of the flow of the offense was good today. And again, the offense staff had a good plan, but I thought the players executed that plan. And anytime you come out of a game with over 300 yards passing, 200 yards rushing, that's generally meaning, there's a good formula for success with what we were trying to do.
All right. Yeah. And I love the way they use Bond now. I talked about this earlier. I mean, he's got now 3 handoffs on those ending arounds for 95 yards. He's got 8 targets, 8 receptions behind the line of scrimmage. 3 of those are touchdowns. One of his ending arounds is also a touchdown. So if you consider those or define those as extensions of the running game, long handoffs or actual handoffs, if you're talking about the ending arounds and the reverses, that's 11 total touches on either targets behind the line of scrimmage or handoffs for Isaiah Bond, and 5 of those have been explosive plays of 20 yards or more. And 4 of those have been touchdowns. That is intentional, ladies and gentlemen. That is not an aberration. That is not coincidence. That's Sark using Isaiah Bond as a little extension of the running game. And he might be your most explosive element in the running game right now. All right, we come back. We'll get into off the record on the other side. We'll also next hour dive back into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. But first, a little off the record, wacky stories from the sports world and beyond the sports world right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Mike Tom Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Got some random stories here, most of them from the sports world, but still pretty damn compelling. The first one is the San Francisco 49ers. They beat the Bucks. Bucks might be in the conversation like the Bengals to be the best bad team in the league. They're just competitive. If they had Mike Evans healthy and their wide receivers healthy, they'd be winning some of these games. But anyway, they lost to the 49ers. And the 49ers, their kicker, Jake Moody, he missed several field goals. After one of his missed field goals, I think a third missed field goal, Deebo Samuel went over to have like a word with him. And it wasn't like, a very supportive word. I guess he went over there to give him a piece of his mind. And then the long snapper, Tabor Pepper, I guess he stepped in to have his kickers back. And then Deebo, I'm sure you've seen a video by now, he just he grabs him by the neck and just kind of shoves the deep snapper. This is during the game in front of everybody. I mean, it was on television, everything, and just kind of shoved the deep snapper out of the way. And when he asked Deebo about it, he said, "I wasn't talking to him. He just came over and wanted to be big bruh." I mean, really, grabbed him by the neck and just shoved him away. That's pretty wild. I don't think I've ever seen that, really. I've seen kickers get kickers often by players on the team. Yeah, they'll give them a piece of their mind, and players are very critical of kickers just because they're kickers. But I don't think I've ever seen this long snapper, deep snapper, take up for the kicker, and then the deep snapper get into a physical altercation with his own teammate as a result of it. That I'm sure it's happening in the locker room, but never on the sideline that I can remember.
Yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, I wouldn't. I get the defending him, but yeah, it's like, man, I can have both y'all. I'm way more important to this team.
Yeah, the long snapper Tabor Pepper said he came over there yelling at Jake Moody to lock in because he had just missed 3 field goals. Like, hey man, lock in. We're trying to win this game, and it ended up being a one score win for the 49ers. And that led to the altercation. Like, hey, you know what? And I support the long snapper. You should have the kickers back. That's your boy. That's you and him hang out all the time. Y'all are probably BFFs. That's your boy. That's your teammate. You should have his back. And honestly, you're supposed to leave the kicker alone. Even when they're missing field goals, you're supposed to leave the kicker alone because it's more of him to mentally crystallize that focus and lock in. He don't need you going over there talking to him. So usually it's always considered the unwritten rule. No, let the kicker do his thing. You just leave them alone. Just like we do in practice, we leave them alone. And for Deebo to go over there. So I don't know which one's more of a violation. I just have never seen it before. Pretty wild. Also, something I'd never seen. Well, I never heard about. We've heard about teammates getting into it. We just talked about Deebo and the long snapper getting into it. Well, Auburn basketball, apparently, there was a report over the weekend before their game against U of H, actually. On the flight there was a reported in-flight altercation between 2 Auburn players. Apparently it got so disorderly, in fact, that they had to turn the plane around.
Yeah.
And return back to where they took off from to make sure that everything was copacetic. They make sure everything was settled. That's how bad it got. That they had to turn the plane around after they got into an in-flight fight. Wow. I don't think we got details on what the fight was about. Or do we even know the players who fought?
We do. We do know the players. It's Jaquie Howard and Jaheim Hudson. They're both reserves that were there. Okay. So it clearly didn't affect Auburn from beating Houston. So
they won the game.
Auburn went into Houston and won. So they were still ready to go. They still locked in. Bruce Pearl just living in the chaos. But I actually did find they put out some of the flight audio of the pilots.
No way.
The pilots it's like radioing back to the tower to say, hey, we got to make an emergency landing. Like, we got to turn this around and flip the plane around. So they have to talk back about what's happening. And so there's some of this audio.
Wow.
Yes, sir. We have got an altercation on board. We knocked to declare an emergency and land. We got a bunch of basketball players fighting. The flight deck is secure. The threat level is contained for the moment. We just had police on the ground, and we had 2 players that got into physical altercation. Clothes were ripped, and 1 bloody player. And Center 2681, it's kind of crazy. Were we direct Montgomery?
Wow. Man, that is pretty crazy. Now I want to know what the fight was about. Now I have to know. Like what was so heated that you guys got into it right there on the plane and it couldn't be settled with, with the, I don't know, just guys talking it out or, even a heated discussion that it got to blows. I wonder what happened.
Yeah, and wasn't able to be separated or pushed away by people.
Like
because you're on a charter flight too. So you're not
that violent that quickly.
You're not. So, it's not like you're in a flight where everyone's so far away from each other.
Yeah,
that you can't normally have people near you to be like, whoa, hey, like not now.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. You're like, hey, we'll settle this later. You couldn't just separate them. So it had to happen real quickly, and it had to be a build up to that. There's no way just whatever popped off at that second. It had to be a build up to that. That something was going on between those two. I don't know. I bet we'll hear something later on about what may have been the genesis of that, but it doesn't matter. They still won the game. So whatever it is, it's a team. It ended up being a team building exercise for them. All right. Speaking of team building, how about this story? Well, it comes from the game last night. The Texans got to do a lot of team building, but this is maybe the first time we've ever witnessed this. When Dan Campbell was having his in-game interview, this was coming out of the half, I believe, right? In-game interview with actually it may have been, I think it was like that time period. Anyway, it was the second half interview, I should say. And Dan Campbell was speaking to the on-field reporter, and listen to what he says about the adjustments that need to be made or things that the Lions need to do to get back in the game. And then what happens literally simultaneously or right after he makes that statement. Here's Dan Campbell.
What do you want to see from your defense in the second half?
Listen, we have one error here or there. If we cut that out, we'll be fine. And then we got to have takeaways. Our defense has to get a couple of takeaways. We're not going to get it all at one chunk here. So just one at a time. We'll do that. We'll play this out till we get 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter before we turn on. But we'll do it. Okay, man.
He said it. They had to get takeaways, and they do right out of the gate. The most valuable coach's interview ever airs there. Carlton Davis with the pick.
In the history of television, has that ever happened?
Never.
The coach is telling the sideline reporter, Melissa Starks, that he needed a takeaway, and during the conversation it happened. That was awesome. Carlton Davis, the old veteran, we talked about him, right? This is the old head back there. He listened to Coach, and now all of a sudden this game just feels different.
That's amazing. Literally spoken into existence as he's saying, we're told the guys our defense has to get a takeaway. Got a takeaway like that moment. That's definitely the first time I've ever seen that, witnessed that in television history or sports television history. So there you go. Unfortunately for the Texans, he'd spoken into existence. All right, we come back. We'll talk about those Texans a little bit, get into some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. We'll talk about the Texans. We'll talk about the Cowboys, a little bit more discussion about the Longhorns' big victory over the Florida Gators. We got it all coming up next right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idillionaire, Patrick Davis, who handles all of our musically themed days of the week, he plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who might have had a tough weekend because their team underperformed. Well, that's the case for Texans fans and Cowboys fans, and we'll talk about both Texans and the Cowboys weekend results coming up here momentarily. But we appreciate Patrick hooking us up with a Smooth Soul Monday. Also, we appreciate all of the veterans out there. Happy Veterans Day to each and every one of you out there celebrating. So hopefully that means a lot of you out there got the day off to celebrate Veterans Day. And if that's the case, you don't have to have the smooth transition into the hectic work week, which is usually the case. So hopefully you just get a chance to enjoy a bit of a 3-day weekend. That'd be nice. But in addition to Patrick,
and a fun fact there, Bill Withers, a veteran.
What?
Bill Withers is a veteran.
Oh, nice. Oh, did you? Is that part of
I
your,
just happen to also know
man, have you been playing veterans the whole time?
No.
I didn't even catch on to that.
No,
okay.
I didn't know.
That would have been that'd have been next level right there. Playing nothing but them, like, wow, that's next level research right there. That is cool though. Yeah,
I do
right. Bill Withers never gets enough love though. In terms of the hits that he cranked out, I mean, he really did. I'll throw that out there. I mean, I'm always shocked when I go through like the discography or the music catalog of Bill Withers, man. Legit.
Yeah.
Legit.
Amazing.
No doubt. Classics. Yeah. But did not know he was a veteran. I don't know how that I didn't know that. So I appreciate my man Patrick hooking us up, broadening our horizons. Also, he broadens our horizons with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted at the Horn ATX on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. Who is the MVP for Texas against Florida? We knew who was going to run away with this. 79% for Quinn Ewers. Trey Moore coming in second with 11%. Andrew Makuba's got 6%, and Jaden Blue got 4% there. As there's choices. If you got another name, feel free to throw it on the text line, throw it in on X as well. But Quinn Ewers going to run away with this one, and we kind of knew he would because what a game he had.
It was a great game. 70% completion percentage, was 333 yards, something like that, throwing the football, 5 touchdowns. And as you pointed out, I mean, he played, 2.5 quarters of football?
I mean, he played one series in the second half.
Yeah, so not even
ours came in on the second series.
A little over 2 quarters of football. Yeah. Yeah, and he did some, and should have had even more prolific numbers. No, I'm not hating on DeAndre Moore because he's been great. But DeAndre Moore had an off day, and he dropped or bobbled 2 deep passes. If he catches one of those, hell, Quinn's hovering close to 40 yards.
Yeah.
And if he catches both of those, he's probably closer to 450 yards, something like that. I forget how long it was, but both of them were deep shot down the field. So, I mean, Quinn could have had 6-7 touchdowns.
No, and that's someone asked him about the 6 touchdowns, and it would have been a record of some sort if he had 6 touchdowns, passing touchdowns in the game, and asked Sark why he didn't leave him in for another series to see if he could get that touchdown. And Sark basically said, like, I don't want to taunt the football gods about things like that. If they happen, they happen. But if they don't, they don't. But don't taunt the football gods with things like that.
Karma, man. Karma. When you do stuff like that, I agree. That's the football gods. Hell, he was already on the bad side of football gods for that 4th and 1 in his own 24. They were already looking up sideways. But, hey, it was a great call by Sark because they converted it. And that was kind of the beginning of the rally to regain the offense to regain its mojo there. But yeah, Quinn, no doubt. I mean, he was unbelievable. That was the one I said. I think the Michigan game is the only game I think he's played better than that. Just because of the level of competition on the road, big game, obviously nationally televised. The world is watching one of those games, going up against a respected defensive coordinator from the NFL, going up against a defense that's got 5-6 NFL players on the defense. That was, in my opinion, the peak of his season so far. But I'm hoping it's not going forward because this was very close to it. He was magnificent in this game versus Florida. So there you go. Topic for the big fat poll today. Who's the MVP of the Texas-Florida game? We believe Quinn's going to run away with it. But I will say this, Trey Moore, we've been waiting on Trey Moore to have his breakout game. Fumble recovery, starts the game off with 2 tackles for loss early in that game. We've been feeling his presence all season long. but it hasn't necessarily been impactful on the stat sheet. You haven't been seeing it materialize on the stat sheet with havoc plays and splash plays. But his presence has been felt. When you watch the film, you can see him. That's why, Longhorn fans are like, well, hey, put Colin Simmons in there instead of Trey Moore. But if you're watching the film, he's doing his job. Like he is, it's not like he's out of position and not like he's getting beat. He's doing his job. He's just not getting enough of those splash plays that people were like, well, this is the game where you got the splash plays from Trey Moore. So Trey Moore could be in that discussion too for, it's the best game that we've seen him have with the 2 tackles for loss and then the fumble recovery. And like I said, I want to say, that was within, I don't know, the 2 or 3 drives. Right?
Yeah, probably.
That was like it was within like 2 drives. That was early on. I would say the fumble recovery was early on for him too.
Yeah,
and so his impact early on in the game, it kind of helped a little bit of the run. You separating early from Florida, and basically killing any hope or belief that Florida could ever have that they were in the game. And I think that was part of what Sark wanted to do. He didn't want them to start believing that they could play with Texas. Because then that's a whole nother issue. That's what happened with Vandy, right? You left Vandy alone, and Vandy's like, we can play with Texas. Like, actually, you can't. But now that you believe you can, you might have a chance to. And Sark didn't even want to give Florida a chance. That's why he wanted to kill any hope. He wanted to destroy any belief that they could play with Texas. And I think the defense did the same thing. They just smothered any hope for Florida early on that they were going, and Florida ended up running the football. Actually, we'll talk about that pretty successfully, but because of the way the game was going and the complementary football that Texas was playing, offense feeding the defense feeding the offense, Florida had no shot. Even their running game, which, like I said, they ran for almost 200 yards. It didn't matter. It was irrelevant. They were inconsequential rushing yards because you couldn't control the game with the running game. The game was still Texas still controlled the game because they were so prolific and they were scoring so quickly. So your defense couldn't get stops. So you running the ball didn't allow you to control the game from a complementary football aspect. And like I said, they averaged 4.8 yards per rush, 197 yards. I told you guys that was the best group of running backs you had faced all year. It was the best group of running backs. And they didn't even have Montrell Johnson, who's one of their key guys. But if they would have had all 3 of those guys, they'd have went to work. They'd have been able to go to work a little bit. They got 197 yards for 4.8 yards per rush. That's not bad. And I think Arkansas's running backs, honestly, I think they may have a better backfield than Florida. And they'll have the element of a +1 in the running game. But I don't think their offensive line is as good as Florida's O-line. I think Florida even Sark said it, go look at them. They'll be one of the most impressive looking teams you see. And he was talking about the big humans because he's obsessed with big humans and fast humans. But their offensive line, I think they have more size than Arkansas. Arkansas's head coach is a offensive line guy, Sam Pittman, but I don't think their offensive line is as good as this O-line. I think they got better assets in the backfield. Jaquinta Jackson's a beast, and Braylon Russell, 250-pound freshman. And we'll talk about this obviously all week long. And the Taylon Green, their quarterback, is a true dual threat. So they'll have, I think, a more explosive. I think they'll have more like an explosive factor with their run game. But like I said, I don't know if they have Florida's O-line, and Texas D-line will be able to match up well with that. But back-to-back weeks having really good running backs, or at least backfields that you're going to face, I think it'll test the Texas rush defense, especially against Arkansas. But I digress. Getting back to Texas and Florida, that's one coaching point coming out of it. Texas probably needs to get be a little bit more sound in the run game, in rush defense. But that's being nitpicky. I mean, you still blew out Florida, and the only thing that they could do was run the football, essentially waving the right flag and running out the clock. And Texas played them differently. Once they got up big, Texas was willing to, that's one thing they were conceding is, okay, if you want to take 4 yards rushing, you'll take it. We're just not going to give you explosive plays that are going to, or gamble too much and give you an opportunity to get back in the game with cheap, easy touchdowns and easy chunk yards. So that's also something to consider. All right, that's the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Go check it out at the Horn ATX on X. Let's get to the Horn headlines, and then we'll come back and hit the Texans and the Cowboys. We'll talk about both of their disappointing outcomes this past weekend. We'll go Texans first, but first let's dive into the Horn headlines. Let's get educated, updated, and informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs dropped their Saturday matchup with the Jazz, 111-110, with Victor Wembanyama racking up 24 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 blocks in the loss. Alperen Sengun had 27 points and 10 rebounds in the Rockets' 101-99 Sunday win over the Pistons. And the Mavs lost the Nuggets 122-120 after a Michael Porter Jr. shot with 6 seconds left gave Denver the lead. Tonight, the Spurs take on the Kings and the Rockets host the Wizards. In college basketball, the Longhorns picked up a 90-59 win over Houston Christian on Friday. Trey Johnson once again showed out with 28 points in the win. Over the weekend, number 1 Kansas held home court with a 92-89 win over the number 9 North Carolina. Number 8 Baylor topped number 16 Arkansas 72-67, and number 11 Auburn upset number 4 Houston 74-69. Texas is back in action Tuesday against Chicago State. In Texas women's basketball, started their season with a 119-47 win over Southeast Missouri, with 6 Longhorns scoring in double digits. In college football, Texas routed Florida 49-17 on Saturday. Elsewhere, number 3 Georgia lost to number 16 Ole Miss 28-10. Number 4 Miami was upset by Georgia Tech 28-23, and number 11 Alabama took out number 15 LSU 42-13. Texas climbs to number 3 in the latest AP poll. Texas women's soccer took home the SEC championship Sunday with a 1-0 win over South Carolina, and now waits for the NCAA tournament bracket reveal today with games starting this weekend. And in the NFL, the Chiefs remain undefeated after blocking a field goal attempt as time expired to top the Broncos 16-14. The Steelers beat the Commanders 28-27, stopping Washington inches short of a first down to end the game. The Cowboys never got out of the gates against the Eagles, losing 34-6, and the Texans gave up a 16-point halftime lead to lose to the Lions 26-23 on Sunday Night Football. Kaimi Fairbairn missed a 58-yard field goal with 1:56 left to take the lead for Houston, and Detroit was able to get their game winner just inside the uprights as time expired. Tonight, the Dolphins take on the Rams on Monday Night Football. And that's your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. Yeah, it is truly a game of inches because kicker Jake Bates, he basically got it right through that upright. I mean, it was
twice.
It looked.
He got it on the left was the right upright and then the left upright. But yeah, both of them were the last 2 field goals they made to tie it and to take the lead were like we're just almost grazed the goalpost.
Oh no, I feel like I'm with you. I feel like there was maybe maybe 2 inches separating it from from the goalpost between the ball. But it is a game of inches for a reason, and it shouldn't have come down to that. When you got a 23-7 lead in the third quarter on any team, doesn't matter. The Detroit Lions are a good team, but to give you some historical context about that. We threw out this stat earlier, but it's a sickening, depressing one. Teams to win when throwing at least 5 interceptions, which Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. Shout out to the Texans defense because they came to play, and a great game plan by DeMeco Ryans against the hottest quarterback arguably in the league at the time. I mean, he was on a heater. Only Lamar Jackson maybe was hotter as a quarterback than Jared Goff was, but he was definitely in the MVP conversation. And to put him in a position where he threw 5 interceptions, arguably his worst game as a pro, it says a lot about DeMeco Ryans and his ability to game plan. He did the same thing against Josh Allen. He's basically killing people's MVP cases. Remember, Josh Allen had one of the worst games completion percentage-wise in the history of the NFL at the time. And then you got Jared Goff coming in 5 interceptions this time. So this says a lot about DeMeco Ryans. I'll give him a lot of credit for that before we start to obviously get very critical of the Texans. But teams to throw at least 5 interceptions in a game and then end up trailing, which, yeah, of course, if you throw 5 interceptions, you're going to end up trailing by at least 15 points or more. The last team, other than the Detroit Lions, who just did it, to win in being in that situation prior to the Lions' victory last night was the 1970 Baltimore Colts. And they were down 17, and they threw 5 interceptions. Teams had been one, and that one, which is that Baltimore Colts team, won 373-1 in those situations since 1933. So, yeah. That is how unlikely it is to lose a game when you're up 16 points after your opponent threw 5 interceptions in the game. Texans found some way to lose it. And it's mostly because there are a lot of reasons we can dive into individually. And I'm sure Patrick's got his reasons. But the second half scoring for the Texans is now, that's the first time you were shut out in the second half. So there's no excuse for being shut out in the second half in an NFL game. You should find a way to put some points on the board. But the truth is, they've been struggling all season long in the second half. They've only scored double digits twice in the second half all season. Here are their point totals in the second half of all their games. 0 last night, then 6, 6, 3, 27 versus the Patriots, 6, 7, 7, 3, 17 versus the Colts. So versus the Colts, that week 1, and then versus the Patriots, I'll give them some credit for those. But there's a reason right now you're 26th in the NFL in second half scoring. 26th. That's a glaring deficiency. And it points to coaching and lack of adjustments, or lack of the ability to anticipate the adjustments of your opponents and then come up with creative counters. And maybe this is something that Bobby Slowick has struggled with. The Texans have a plus 57-point differential in the first half of games. That margin drops to minus 59 in the second half of games. Yeah, it's an issue. And it's been an issue all season long, but that just cost you what could have been a statement win and one of the biggest wins in arguably in the history of the franchise. You're not that old of a franchise, and you haven't been. You're not always competitive either, right? That cost you a huge win, man. Especially without Nico, without Stephon Diggs, that'd have been a win showing. You got a schematic advantage from your coaches, and you got a quarterback that you can believe in no matter what the odds are against you. That with CJ Stroud, you always got a shot, and I do think they'll get there, but there are just more and more signs this season showing us the Texans are not ready yet to be a championship contender. They're close, and I think they're gonna get there, but they are not there because the only good team they've beaten is the Bills, and they can't really beat good teams because I think they got some deficiencies that are so glaring, offensive line and pass protection. And I think their second half scoring is now, which is probably related, I'm sure, at one point, but that second half scoring is now another big one. That's an issue.
So I want to play you some audio. This is Bobby Slowick from last week asked about the second half scoring, because this is not a 1 week issue. It's a consistent issue. So here's Bobby Slowick last week when he was asked about why they're having trouble scoring, and is it the adjustments that the other teams are making?
There's no, people like to think there's some secret sauce between the first half, the second half. There's all these adjustments that happen. Everybody makes adjustments. We've talked about it before. You have subtle things that happen within a game. There's not one thing a defense is doing in the second half that's different than what they do in the first half. We're not doing our job as well, and that's been an emphasis for us for 3 weeks, and we got to keep straining on it.
Okay. So he's basically saying adjustments are overrated. Is that kind of what he's saying?
I think he's saying these teams are not changing up how they're playing us. We're just not playing the same way. And I think Bobby may be slightly off on this.
Yeah, because isn't that more of an indictment if they're not changing stuff and you guys are still climbing up?
If it's just our guys are not executing, it also feels very much more of and D'Amico got a little flag for somewhat throwing CJ Stroud under the bus.
I heard that. Yes.
And the reality was he was asked directly about CJ Stroud. So it wasn't like he called him out, but it came across, because how the media works, that it came across that he was calling CJ Stroud out. And CJ took the loss too. He himself said, it's my fault that we lost. I didn't play well enough in the second half. So
CJ always takes the blame.
So he took it. So, but there's been some of those problems that the coaches have had this season of when the players maybe don't do things right. They go, well, we're calling the game right. They're just not executing. You go, okay, well then they need to fire you and hire a coach who understands how to coach teams, because you can't just, that's not an answer all the time.
No.
And at a certain point, you have to start taking in, go, okay, why are they not executing? How do we change those? Is it because of something they're seeing in the defense? Are they showing different things in the second half? Even if they're not doing that much, are they showing it different? Are they bringing one extra blitzer sometimes? What are they doing that is making such a difference? What did they find that was your weakness in that first half that they can attack more in the second? So maybe they did it, but now they're doing it they're doing it 2 or 3 times more in the second half. So yeah, they did it in the first half, but now they're going after it. Mm-hmm. Those are the adjustments. And when you say there's nothing they're doing different, I feel like you're wrong on this in some sense. I don't think that they're making these gigantic adjustments. Yeah. I agree that they're not coming out and say, well, we've been playing in base and now we'll play man all game. We'll play zone. You know what? How about we switch out all of our personnel? It's not like adjustments like that, but they are minor adjustments about how they're calling the plays. And it feels like Bobby Slowick is not adjusting at all to that. He's just saying, we're just going to keep going against it. And when it keeps not working, you can't just say, well, what are you doing wrong? What are you players doing wrong where this we can go? And it's, if you don't have this strong enough identity because you don't have Nico Collins out there, you don't have Stephon Diggs out there, you can't impose your will on teams when you don't when you have those injuries. As a coach, you have to find ways to get the team going. And that feels right there where there's a disconnect on understanding how to get this team going in the second half and the importance of really trying to get CJ Stroud into a rhythm in the second half. And I mean, I know you can't ask for a worse start than what he did in the beginning of the second half, throwing a pick immediately. We were talking about that earlier. So, if you're talking about a rhythm or anything else, that does not help. But it's frustrating when you hear those things because, again, it's all those pieces where I said it earlier. This is a Texans team that is not that far away from being a really, really good team. They're not that far away from it. Yeah. It feels like just a couple pieces get picked up and go a different way. All of a sudden, this team starts playing, especially Nico Collins comes back. Will Anderson comes back. Man, this team, it's not that far away. But also on the back end of that, a couple other things go wrong, and this team misses the playoffs because all of a sudden they lose some games to Tennessee, and they lose games that they're supposed to be winning because the spiral starts to go the other direction. And instead of progressing, they regress, and it falls apart. The wheels just fall off in the back end. CJ Stroud starts throwing picks all the time, and everyone starts to freak out. The offensive line played a little better this game. They're still not great. 4 sacks, still not great, but it was better than it was.
It was better.
So you're like, you see the progress, and then you watch the second half and you see the regression, and you just wonder which team is going to be real down the stretch. And maybe they just finish like this, and it's just a first round exit in the playoffs because you don't play strong, or maybe you get an opponent like they played the Browns last year, so you get the win there. But if you're not going to beat a good team in the playoffs, like a really good team, it's just rough right now because you're not there right now, clearly. But you feel like it's a couple things change, and you are, because again, you should have beaten them last night.
If you have Nico or Will Anderson, I think you beat them.
Yeah,
I think they're impactful.
Again, you should have beaten them without both those guys, which should tell you how good you can be. You're missing one of the best receivers in football. You're missing a top pass rusher in football, and you were still should have, by all accounts, won that game.
Agreed.
So you're not that far off, but some things are just holding you back. And it feels like CJ Stroud taking accountability, but the accountability may not be fully there across the board. Even CJ Stroud, when he says he's taking it, how much are you then taking it and taking that into practice and fixing the errors, as opposed to I'll shoulder the blame, but I'm not changing.
No, it is. I mean, it's like I said, it kind of reminds me of the O-line issue too, where I don't know. There wasn't a lot of improvement from week to week, even though it was a glaring issue. And it seems like the second half scoring is kind of like that too. It's like, well, I haven't seen many modifications to the offense to account for this glaring deficiency. So what do you do? Are we just hoping that it gets better? Or are we just assuming like, oh no, it'll get better as the guys, focus more and more, we emphasize it? Or are you actually schematically, strategically, tactically changing things to address it? So we'll see, but that's the big issue. That's the biggest reason you lost the game. There are other reasons. I mean, if they could have got the running game going, the fact that Joe Mixon, you brought this up earlier, he basically had his worst game of the season, I think hurts you too. If you got Joe Mixon in the run game going like you have every game that he started, he had 46 yards on 25 carries. That's the lowest yardage total for a player with 25 plus carries since 2013. So he wasn't just inefficient. It was the most inefficient performance for a running back with 25 plus carries in 10 years. If you didn't have that performance, then I think the offense would have been in a better situation. The missed field goal, there were opportunities. I mean, CJ Stroud missed Tank Dell, what could have been an easy touchdown, settling for 3 instead of 7.
But that's like the Joe Mixon thing.
Had a chance to win.
In the Joe Mixon thing, you say, okay, he's not running the ball well. He's got 2 receptions. One of them's for 36 yards. So get him in the pass game. Get him outside. Get him the ball. Get the ball in one of your best playmakers' hands, because you don't have a lot of playmakers out there anymore. Because Nico's out, Stephon Diggs is out, Tank Dell. They're really trying to cover. They're putting their best guys on Tank Dell to take him away. So get the ball to Joe Mixon. We see it with Sark does in Texas. If you got to get the ball to your running back and he can't get out of the backfield, we'll get him out of the backfield and then give it to him.
Yep.
And they weren't really doing that either. So those are the types of things you want to see in the second half, is get the ball in your best player's hands. And it didn't feel like they were doing it. It sucks that this is Mechie's best game as the Texan. It finally comes, and it's in a loss.
That was a good game.
But you love to see that maybe he can step up and play that role as a number 3 receiver for you when Nico comes back. If he can step into that role, that'd be big for them.
That would be great.
But there's a lot of things in it where, the weekend was going great watching football to the Longhorns, and then the Texans the first half, and then, man, the second half, it went down fast.
It did, man. It really, like I said, it when they were up in the third quarter, 23-7, I thought to myself, all right, they just really, but the defense is playing, I thought to myself, all right, as long as they can put together some sustained drives and just, get a couple of points, field goal here, a couple of field goals, I said, I think they'll be okay. And if that had happened, they would have been okay. That did not happen. The offense pretty much just went into a shell. And defensively, I still think that's if I know in the fourth quarter you could have asked for or at least in the second half and the third quarter, you could ask for the defense to make some more plays. But man, forcing 5 interceptions against a quarterback that was on a heater like Jared Goff. So the defense did more than enough. You should have been able to close off that game. I think the issues now for me are mostly with the offense. What's your biggest? I don't really have a big issue with the defense. I don't.
No, I mean, you get Jalen Petrie can be attacked in the pass game in certain ways,
but he was out there making plays.
No, he's so good in the run game.
Oh man!
And so you can attack him, especially in play action. You can attack him, but every team's going to have a few of those pieces, and so that one doesn't bother me as much, especially when they're healthy. That the defense is really, really good. You saw Azeez Al-Shaair, what a difference he makes being back, being the brain of that defense.
Darnell Autry, oh man, he's gonna be a dude. Well, he was a dude. We hadn't seen him
killing it.
Yeah, because of the suspension. I hadn't been used to seeing him out there. Oh man, he took back with Will Anderson.
It took him like a couple games to get back into the game shape, I think.
Yeah,
because that first couple games, and he got his first sack last week. And now he's looking really good. That pass rush that can come after you, that defense is there. It's getting better week to week. The offense is not getting better. The offense has times where it figures things out in the first half, but it feels like teams catch up to it. And they haven't been able to play in the second half, and that is a huge problem.
Yeah, Bobby Slowick losing some. He had a lot of clout and street cred. People were talking about he was going to be on the fast track to being a head coach, and now he's losing some of that luster. If he figures these things out, I think he'll still be fine in that regard. But you better figure it out fast. Or the Texans, are we looking at an early exit in the playoffs? They're still going to make the playoffs, and they're still going to win the division. even with these issues,
Yeah.
that's how bad that division is. But that's not what that's not what the Texans are looking at right now. Speaking of the Cowboys, we'll get into the Cowboys in Rod's rant. We'll play some sound from Jerry, from Micah, and from CeeDee Lamb talking about the Cowboys' 28-point butt whipping they received at the hands of their division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll do that when we come back right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. Let's get right to some Cowboys discussion here. So Cowboys lost, no surprise, got whipped by the Philadelphia Eagles without Dak Prescott. I think we all knew that was going to be the case. 28-point loss for the Dallas Cowboys. And, times are tough down there with Cowboys and Cowboys fans. With that 34-6 loss, Jerry Jones afterwards was asked about Dak Prescott's impact. Is it now a little bit more, glaring and obvious that without Dak Prescott, how Dak-centric this offense has been and is, considering they've only scored 6 points without Dak? Here is what Jerry Jones had to say.
What does today's performance tell you about Dak's role in this team and what he's been doing this season?
Well, what do you mean?
Given that you saw what the team looked like without Dak, how do you when you look at the difference, what do you think about Dak?
I don't want to be sarcastic, but are you got the same arithmetic I've got? We've won 3 games with Dak. Okay, so I'm just saying we weren't playing well with Dak at all.
If Dak cannot come back, how much does that hurt your hopes for this season?
Well, I don't want to deal in hypotheticals, but anybody that loses their top quarterback has some adjustments to make, and they're usually adjusting uphill. And so I thought that basically we'd look better tonight without Dak. I thought we'd look better on offense than we looked without Dak. Seen Cooper play better than we played tonight. Philadelphia's got a lot to do with that. That's what it is.
That's what it is. Yeah. So obviously Jerry not in a good mood. I think we all understand the frustration for the Cowboys fans because they got a lot of games. I think that may end up like that. Some in the division too, because they got to play, Washington, which is a good team in that division, and they got some tough games down the stretch without Dak, of course. So another issue that came up for the Cowboys in their loss to the Eagles early on, they actually were, driving the football, and they were in Eagles territory, actually in the red zone. They were trailing 7-3. They were actually second and goal. And Cooper Rush actually found the CeeDee Lamb with some separation in the end zone, and throwing it to him on a crossing route. CeeDee Lamb lost the football in the glare of the sun and ended up, obviously being an incompletion, and they settled for a field goal. And didn't really matter. That was actually they didn't score for the rest of the game, but it ended up being a field goal. Could have been a touchdown. I don't know if it would have mattered. They end up losing 34-6. But in the aftermath, in the post game, CeeDee Lamb was asked about what happened on that particular play, and he got into what has been a controversial topic among Cowboys fans.
Couldn't see the ball at all. The sun. But yes, 1,000%.
You talked to Barry about that.
I mean, y'all doing my job right now.
Yeah. So when he was asked about the reason that he missed the football or the reason he lost it, he said, "Hey man, it was clearly losing it in the sun. That was clearly the case." And Jerry, because that was a hot topic among Cowboys fans, he actually addressed it. I don't know if he was asked about it. He was answering questions about a lot of different things, but then he addressed it, and he said, "We do know where the damn sun's going to be at our own stadium." He said, "Well, let's just tear the damn stadium down and build another one. You kidding me?" When he was asked about whether they should put up curtains in the stadium, that was his response. They do use curtains actually for a lot of events. When WWE has an event there, or basketball games there, or concerts there, they use the industrial size curtains, which Jerry Jones does not like to use because that affects the aesthetics and the photo ops for the beautiful stadium that he built. So that even though it affects performance on the field, he's more worried about the photo ops. And that's, hey, he's the owner, and that's the reason they're the most valuable sports franchise on the planet. Is because he thinks about those types of things when others don't. But anyway, he was asked about the Cowboys, or at least the complaints about that. He said, everybody's got the same thing. He said, every team that comes in here and has the same issues, they know where the sun's going to be at. Every team has the same thing. So he's basically like saying it's like a home field advantage for the Cowboys, except it's not an advantage for the Cowboys. Right? It's kind of how he's phrasing, like it's basically kind of part of the home field advantage for us, but it's not really an advantage.
Well, he makes it seem like every team in the league every single week has to deal with this problem. Like only when they play you. But Jerry, do you not watch football? I don't know if you watch the rest of the NFL. Because you talk about it in a sense of, well, every team has to deal with sun. You go, no, one team does. And it's you, and so the other team, when they play here, they do. But that's one game a season for those guys, and if it's at that window of time,
it's you.
But you have to do it 5 or 6 times a season.
Yeah.
So it is exponentially worse on your team because you have to continue to deal with it over and over again, and they can kind of just get it out of the way and do it once. And if they, they can run the ball a couple times more when that's happening instead of trying to throw it. But you have to get your offense going. Also, by the way, you didn't pay for any running back, so you can't just run the football.
Boom. There you go.
But, maybe, since you knew how many 230 games you had in advance, maybe you should have got a running back. Because that's all you can do at that point because the sun's in your eyes. But, that would take foresight. And
yes,
it's mind-boggling. every time he says something now, the answer is so crazy. Well, you have curtains. You put them up all the time. Why won't you do that? Why don't we tear down the stadium? Okay, Jerry, no one meant the most ridiculous.
Yeah, nobody said anything like that. We're talking about a solution to a problem, and he doesn't want to entertain it. He says, I mean, he's pretty blatant about it too. It's like, no, man, that matters more to him than the players' complaints on the field about how it affects their performance. Like, no, man, just go figure it out. Win. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. It doesn't matter. And once again, there's one more piece of audio I want to play before we get to the break. And this one is Micah. So Micah was asked about Mike McCarthy. By the way, Micah has responded to the media's coverage of this quote because apparently it's blown up now. And he thinks that he's being painted in a negative light, or at least his words are being painted in a negative light. So here's Micah when he was asked about, I think this is after the game, he's asked about Mike McCarthy's status with the team. Here is Micah Parsons.
Mike's on the final year of his contract, so outside there's of course going to be questions. What's the sentiment inside the locker room, and what do you tell people who are wondering about whether McCarthy will be your coach next year?
You know, that's above my pay grade about if Mike is coaching again next year. But, you know, all coaching aside, coaching, you know, Mike can leave and go wherever he wants. But the guys I kind of feel bad for is guys like Zach Martin and guys who might be on their last year on their way out, you know, because that's who I wanted to hold the trophy for. You know, you want to win games and do great things with those type of legends who put in more time and work than Mike McCarthy ever did. So those are the kind of guys that I have so much sympathy and hurt for.
When we played the comments first, I was like, man, that's going to be misunderstood, misconstrued somehow. I'm telling you. Well, it already has, in his opinion. He put this out via Twitter about an hour ago. He said, LOL, damn, yeah, I'm going to just eat the fine from now on because the way y'all twist words and flip them around for content is nasty work. He said, you would think guys who played and coached the sport would have better journalism, but I was very wrong. They trying to use my name, image, and likeness with the Dallas Cowboys to continue to tear the beautiful organization with drama and bad media attentions. Be better at Get Up ESPN. I'm sure they love that.
Yeah.
And then he said, I will be addressing this today on his Bleacher Report podcast. He said, time for truth and real facts. Tune in to The Edge today.
I'm gonna eat the fine and not talk to the media. Tune into my podcast.
It is so good.
Things
It
I've
is
ever heard
so
in my life.
on brand for the Cowboys.
Jeez.
So on brand for the Cowboys.
First of all, let's state for the record. You know how you avoid that comment in the first place? I can tell you how you avoid this. You don't have a lame duck coach.
That is true.
So first off, that's how you avoid that. Is you just don't have that question be asked because there isn't a lame duck coach that everyone knows is not coming back. So you can have that to start off with, and then Micah Parsons go, I can't believe they thought I was talking bad about the coach when I said, well, he can go whatever, and he's never worked as hard as these guys. I can't believe they took that out of context.
It's like it didn't sound very complimentary. You know,
like, I get if I'm trying to hype up Rod Babers and I call every other person I've worked with a bum, they might take offense to it. I can just hype up one guy without having to say the other. What a bum! It's so ridiculous.
You're right. It is. It is just. It's so on brand.
I'm not going to talk to the media no more. Tune in my podcast.
Tune into my podcast today. If you're sick of the media and all their BS, me too. Tune into my podcast. Though. It's coming up. Oh, that's great. That's good stuff. That is. And you know what? He's right. That's Jerry. That's why Jerry Jones loves Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
That's why he loves Micah, because Micah and Jerry, I think they also kind of think along the same line, just like, hey, promotion. Because Micah is a promoter. Micah's got some promoter in him. The stuff he does with CJ, he likes getting out there. He does his own podcast. He likes talking to the media. He says he ain't gonna talk to the media. I guarantee he's gonna be talking to the media. Micah loves talking to the media.
He's gonna talk to his podcast. He's gonna give a 60-minute answer to the question now.
Exactly. He
like
can't
the
wait
media
to get
doesn't
to
have
the
access to this podcast.
It's great. Oh, but you can't twist his words on his podcast somehow. I don't know. Maybe you can. All right. We'll come back. We'll get into so who said that. That's pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, we have to identify and recall who said that. We'll play when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Loho and Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a smooth so Monday. And that's when Patrick plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who might have had a tough weekend. It is also Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. And thank you to all the veterans out there. Hope you're enjoying your Veterans Day. Also, the topic for the Big Fat Poll today is up. Patrick always helps us with a great conversation starter there. It simply wants to know who you believe is the MVP of the Texas Florida game. And looks like Quinn Ewers still running away with this thing. 79% of you voted thinks Quinn Ewers was the MVP of the Texas Florida game, and I agree with all of you guys out there. But go vote over at the Horn ATX on X, the X Twitter X account, I should say. There, 11% of you think Trey Moore actually. So he's second right now. Believe that he may have been the MVP of the Texas Florida game. All right, let's get right to it. Time to play Who Said That. That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that.
Man, be real slow comparing people to Lamar Jackson. That's a multi-time MVP. That's Mr. Jackson. We'll see Mr. Jackson in a few days.
That is Mike Tomlin. That's Mike Tomlin talking about, I believe they're asking about Jaden Daniels and comparing Jaden Daniels to Lamar Jackson. He's like, Jaden Daniels is good, but slow down. Don't be comparing nobody to Lamar Jackson. You got too much. I play that dude twice a year. Got too much respect for him. Don't do it.
No,
you ain't get no bulletin board material from me.
I like the coach that can compliment another player appropriately without having to. Well, he's a good player, and we try and play him twice, and we have to, without having the coach speak it too much.
He said we should call him Mr. Jackson from now on. Mr. Jackson. I like that, actually.
That's a
I think we also
MVP.
If he wins a third one, can we just start calling him Mr. Jackson then? Like straight up. No, seriously. I think if he wins a third MVP before he's 30 years old, we need to officially
He does need a really
switch.
good nickname, right?
Yes, and Mr. Jackson would be a perfect. It's like, no, we just call we don't call anybody in football Mr. Nobody. Yeah. But a 3-time MVP, Mr.
30.
Right? And then we could take the song from Outkast and then we can make a little parody song with it. Instead of Miss Jackson. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. There you go. Boom.
Sorry, Mr. Jackson, but you still have to play the Chiefs.
But Holmes is for real. Yeah. Well done. I like that. All right. Good stuff there, Patrick. Great job as always. Thank you guys for listening and for watching. Remember, the revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. We love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Until next time, hook 'em and peace.